across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yes, welcome back. It is the home of common sense. So much to get through here. Tens of thousands of people marched in central London at the weekend. Did you know this? This is against what they referred to as the far right. The demonstration featured anti-racist placards and support from celebrities. The event followed, of course, last year's Unite the Kingdom rally, which drew over 100,000. Which rally had the most people there? And can somebody help me out on this? What is the far right? Also this afternoon, MPs and benefit claimants are both set to receive significant payments this week to combat the cost of living crisis, despite Rachel Reeves dismissing widespread aid for ordinary working families facing energy crisis due to the war in Iran. MPs still get a 5% pay rise, including 3,300 quid cost of living adjustments. Also this afternoon, a Sun investigation can reveal that police forces across Britain failed to solve a colossal 92% of all burglaries last year. In 1/3 of the country, cops cracked 0 cases. This is an outrage. And also this. Yep, can you see me there, spinning the odd disc after that, throwing some shapes on a breakfast show? Another BBC presenter walks the plank. But why? What really happened behind the scenes at Radio 2? Details to come. More on that story. And, of course, all the breaking news, everything you need to know, 0344 499 1000. So, what have we got here? This is an interesting question. Tens of thousands of protesters gathered in central London on Saturday for an anti-far-right march organised by a group called the Together Alliance.
I guess we're coming out on the streets to try and fight the far right and prove that we're stronger together and that we're the majority of the UK population.
Majority of the UK population stronger together, fight the far right. Who are the far right? Please tell me. Crowds took to the capital streets with placards displaying messages including fight ignorance, not immigration, and reject racist lies, all visible for everybody to see. Saturday's Together Alliance descended on London town, rallying against what they called the far right. They said 500,000 people showed up. The Met Police said 50,000. So, backed by around about 500 groups, the march snaked its way from Park Lane down there to Whitehall, where crowds were treated to the profound wisdom of the greatest orators of our time. Billy Bragg, Charlotte Church, Paloma Faith also pitched up, and the Archdeacon of Social Injustice, Lenny Henry, was there as well, because nothing signals a grassroots socialist movement like millionaire celebrities. Organisers boldly declared it's the biggest demonstration against the far right, and they all had something to say.
I just wanted to do the right thing, and I want to make a stand against racism. I want to make a stand against the far right, whoever they are supposed to be.
What? Sorry, whoever they're supposed to be? You're on a flipping demo, mate. You've come from Burnley and you don't know what you're marching against. You half-baked dodgepot. Whoever they're supposed to be. I don't know, mate. I've just come down here. He's suddenly become a southerner, this fella. Just come down from Burnley, thought I'd give it large with me placard. So there I am, doing my thing. Injustice, racist, xenophobia. Who is it you're against? I don't know, mate. I'm just going to keep going, waving this bloody placard. Brilliant. The scene, of course, and the sense of the wicked far right, not just the right, by the way, have you noticed that, but the far right, was palpable as the crowd showed their anger and their reasons for being part of the good and the great.
I think for common sense, everybody knows the breeding hatred, racism, xenophobia is unacceptable, inhuman. The failure of subsequent British government, I think, better to know.
And with that, somebody dragged him off. Don't be talking to the media, Sunshine. Don't be talking to those dodgy media people. You might actually say something that exposes the ridiculousness of your own argument. There it was. That I'm against the racism, and I'm against the racism, I'm against the bad stuff. That's all it is. It's just a sense, a feeling. It's bizarre. There were prominent political speakers there as well, from the who's who of the British left. Diane Abbott, former Labour MP, told the cheering crowd it was the largest anti-racist march she'd seen in her lifetime. And Andy Burnham was even there from Greater Manchester. Zach Polanski, naturally pitched up. Jeremy Corbyn, he said that the problem there, we're rooting in an economic system rigged in favour of corporations and billionaires. Can they wheel out any more cliches? And everybody's favourite dubious lefty, Zara Sultana MP, who's as mad as a box of frogs.
Look around you. We are the majority. This country belongs to us. So yes, we will defeat them at the ballot box, but when necessary, we fight them in the streets as well. Whose streets? Our streets. Whose streets? Our streets. The choice is clear. It is socialism or barbarism, and we must choose socialism.
No, she started off, didn't she, with the... She nearly went Churchillian, that we will fight them, and then she went into the whose streets? Our streets. Whose streets? Our streets. Brilliant! This is the cacophony of left-wing nonsense that spewed out of Whitehall this weekend. Notably absent, by the way, was Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, in whose city this all took place, whose roads were blocked, buses rerouted, who couldn't make it to the actual event himself. Quite an oversight, really, if you consider this was supposed to be Britain's biggest anti-far-right march in history. Tell me this, please. Who are the far right? Who is this group of people they're against? There was all sorts of anti-reform and Farage posters and placards going on, people who'd made a papier-mâché Nigel, that kind of thing, all happening. Kids with rainbow flags painted over their schnozzes. I mean, the whole thing was a big left-wing loving. But who, for goodness sake, please tell me, who is this far right that they're arguing against? 0344 499 1000. Let's get a word on this and the other big stories of the day. Oscar Redrop, former number 10 advisor, is with us. Oscar, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian.
Nice to have you with us as ever. There it is. It's the far right. They never refer to the right as the just the right. It has to be the far right or the extreme right. Even the Conservatives have had this. You know, somebody like Tom Tugendhat, who's sort of right down the middle, would be called, you know, a far-right extremist because he's not a socialist. It's an extraordinary sort of anti-intellectual disposition that's displayed from this cohort, but they love it. They absolutely love it.
Yeah, and I remember back in the day with the Tories, you know, every new government that was formed or every reshuffle, it was, this is officially now the most hard right government we've ever had, and it's, you know, it's always getting more right wing. And
yeah.
I imagine even Keir Starmer, I mean, as mad as it sounds, Keir Starmer by this lot is charged as being, you know, probably far right, hard right on issues. You know, it's just complete insanity. What I would say is, you know, like, that's just like, you look around it, okay, so, and that guy from Burnley that you had in your VT, good knowledge that, by the way, because you just clocked the football shirt, didn't you? So that's very good knowledge.
Yeah, got to know your Burnley. You have to know where they are, frankly, Oscar.
Yeah, a guy like that, okay, like, he's there for a day out. Like, and that's cool, actually. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
You know, if you just want to have like a Glastonbury day out, basically, where you paint your faces, you wave from flags, you know, love and peace to all men and women, you know, that's cool, actually. I have no, that's fine. It's when the politicians like Zara Sultana start talking about, we'll fight them in the streets, and they start commandeering this stuff. Like, not only is it like these people aren't serious, okay? So I think that's just established that for one. But actually, these people also have some pretty, not very lovey-dovey views. These people have some pretty destructive views, some quite dangerous views, some quite scary views. And that's when it all changes. And actually, it's kind of this weird mirror image thing where they would look at whatever it is, the hard right as being these really evil, dangerous kind of politics in our society. But you can look at some of these people's views. You know, like the Green Party, for example, have spoken about some of our counter-terrorism laws, you know, disbanding it, you know, on the grounds that it's racist. I mean, and to you know, you kind of go, oh, that sounds, you know, that sounds kind of, you know, no, like that is so dangerous. That, you know, that's when like the lives and citizens of our country are in danger with policy that's like that. You know, and don't get me wrong, these guys are doing well in the polls. You know, so
that's the bit I can't get my head around. There was one clip which we couldn't play, actually, because it was just a bit confused. There was too much noise around. But one woman said, you know, they're taking money off the working classes and giving it to millionaires. Now, it's those kind of vacuous platitudes that keep this movement alive, but it doesn't it's not open to any level of intellectual scrutiny, a statement like that.
No, not at all. And look, I'm not Rory Stewart's biggest fan, don't get me wrong. But when Zach did that, can't even remember, to my credit, I can't even remember what that podcast is called. But when he went on Alistair Campbell and Rory Stewart's podcast, and Rory asked him some really basic questions about the economy and, you know, government debt. And the guy just, you know, and to be honest, I'm not an expert in that. I kind of
you're not purporting to want to run the country. No,
exactly. Though. I kind of watched Zach and I thought, oh God, that's kind of what I would maybe try and cobble together.
Yeah.
But like, this is a guy doing well in the polls, and honestly, it is pretty Looney Tune stuff. It really, really, really is. But in terms of the people who went, you know, most of them don't know what you know, it's just a day out. You know, it was the weather was a bit better. It's getting brighter. It's a day out. You know,
well, it's that thing. I think we've talked about it before, Oscar. You know, where people put on their Twitter bio, you know, I hate injustice. Well, as if anybody likes injustice. I mean, these are sort of stupid remarks that get these people out of bed in the morning. You know, I don't like inequality. I can't stand bullies. You know, there's no other position than not liking bullies or inequality and harassment. But it's they kind of own these narratives as if everybody else outside their own closed kind of circle are somehow fanboys of injustice.
I know, and like in terms of the Paloma face and all the celebs that go there, I mean that makes me really cringe, because that all they want to do there is make themselves feel really lovely. And you know, when you actually listen to what they say, they are saying nothing. It's not edgy. Like these people think they're kind of cool and rebellious, and like you are saying nothing edgy. You are saying everything that is received, and that is like it's like a, you know, kind of a lukewarm bubble bath of like speeches. It is nothing. It is meaningless. And actually, the other thing, and this. And that's why I get without going on a tangent, I got really let down by the Tories, that 2019 Tory intake, because I thought that could have changed something. Because what these people tend to be, these people aren't working class. These people, like when you're actually hustling and you're fighting for your life, you know, to make something of yourself, you don't have time for all this stuff. You know, and all these niceties and, you know, isn't kumbaya stuff. You're like, I'm just trying to pay my bills. I'm trying to fight everything. Like so the people who tend to gravitate towards this politics, it's because they can. It's because they can. You know, because they're actually pretty comfortable.
Yeah. Absolutely right. You can, you know, you can make lots of very kind of big statements when you're very comfortable. You're immune from all the usual things that happen to many people. You're sitting there in your nice Cotswold house worth about $6 million. None of it touches you. You know, you're not affected by anything. So you can have these kind of very sort of liberal opinions.
Exactly.
And most of those cases, but most people have not. The people concerned have never been in any position other than that as well.
Exactly. And all your viewers and listeners right now are probably, you know, vast majority of them work hard, right? And that is the priority and the forefront of their minds. And that obviously informs how they see the world.
Sure.
And there probably is a more pragmatic edge to it.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of them would love a day out in the sun where they can put some tunes on and walk around London and have a party. But like, life dictates that they can't do that. They have families to feed. They have bills to pay. And I just, honestly, last thing on this, Zach does need to be taken seriously, though, because this guy is, I mean, I personally don't find him charismatic. He comes across very, very nerdy to me. But nonetheless, there is something there. There is something there. He isn't afraid to take people on, to take, as he would call it, which is interesting when you look at reform and some of the. He's interested in taking on the establishment, and he has to be taken seriously.
Sure.
And the adequate scrutiny needs to be applied.
Yeah. Absolutely bang on. Let's move to this story, Oscar. This week, both benefit claimants and members of Parliament, two separate groups, of course, will receive, or maybe not, who knows, will receive major cost of living payments, despite Rachel Reeves recently rejecting widespread support for the energy emergency caused by the war, of course, in Iran. MPs are still due to get that £3,300 cost of living adjustment as part of a 5% pay rise. Let's have a listen to Rachel Reeves.
Reduced the costs and in fact cancelled the eco scheme altogether, which means that that cost no longer needs to be paid for by bill payers or indeed by taxpayers. So those are the changes that I made in the budget last year, which would take £150 off people's energy bills, and Ofgem have confirmed today that bills will be falling by around 7% from April the 1st this year, taking money off people's energy bills, and that is alongside the freeze in prescription charges and the freeze in rail fares that I set out in the budget.
Yeah, and the breakfast clubs as well, Oscar, if you didn't catch that. But, yeah, so everything's tickety-boo in the world of Rachel Reeves.
Yeah, it's the kind of the greatest hits, as they would see them,
isn't it?
That number 10 and 11 roll through, that is entirely separate from very, very precise energy crisis, energy costs. You know, and then you'll hear them reference, you know, free school meals, and you kind of go, right, not quite sure that really works, I'm afraid. Look, in of itself, you know, if someone is on benefits, and we know this cost of living energy crisis that is coming down the track, you know, them receiving support, they probably have to be pretty cold, I would say, to be, that's outrageous,
sure,
that shouldn't happen. But when you contrast it, and when the context is working people that the Labour Party claim to love so much, and working families breaking their backs to battle every day and keep their heads above the line, when they don't get that support and they look next door to their neighbours who aren't working and are getting that support, that's when you have a problem. Yeah. And that's when it's politics, and that's when it's priorities. And for a party that made such a big deal about, you know, working people this, working people that, I am yet to see true, genuine policy that is geared at supporting working people and prioritising them over those that do not work.
Yeah. It might have been a nice look. I know MPs don't suggest their own pay rises. I know it comes from that sort of external body, but it would have been a good time, wouldn't it, for collectively for MPs to go, do you know what, at this moment in time, we're going to make a collective decision that none of us are going to take the extra money, even if it doesn't, you know, clearly it's not going to cover the rest of the nation's hiking energy bills, but it would be symbolic and it would be a nice thing to do right now. We tend not to see that very often. Oscar, stay with us. Oscar Redrop is with us, former senior number 10 advisor. And that question, who are the far right? I keep hearing the left banging on. They had their march at the weekend. The good and the great from the world of left-wing politics, and lots of their supporters all pitched up down in London, what they called the biggest rally in the history of rallies at any time in the country's history. They were there, they were loud, they were proud, they waved their banners. We're against the far right, we're against this. Who is it? Who are they arguing against? Who are the far right in this respect? 0344 499 1000.
Breaking news until breakfast. Two men aged 47 and 45 have in the last hour been arrested in connection with the Golders Green arson attack. To me, symbolising absolutely a rise in anti-Semitism. Again, nothing from the government.
Breaking news for you. It's just a small matter. They have just an announcement saying transgender girls, i.e. boys, they must leave girl guiding by this September the 6th.
We are buying from Norway because they fully exploit their share of the North Sea oil and gas fields, and we don't. Alice in Wonderland nuts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Andy says, I'm looking forward to Everything You Need to Know section. What's the meaning of life, Ian? Yeah, I do say that every day. Everything you need to know and all the breaking news has become like a kind of sentence crutch. Well, it's not a sentence crutch because I literally remind myself to say it. But you take the point, everything you need to know. Well, I mean, what would that be? Everything you need to know, as Andy rightly points out. I mean, really? Everything you need to know? That's an extensive list. That would be something, wouldn't it? Will I be able to do that when I'm on the Radio 2 breakfast show? I'll come to that in a moment. What else have we got going on? Oscar Redrop is with us, of course, former senior advisor at Number 10. Here's a disturbing one, Oscar. It's one of those sort of slightly deja vu, Groundhog Day things, whatever way you want to slice it. An investigation by The Sun reveals that police failed to solve an astonishing 92% of burglaries across Britain last year, with not a single case cracked in 1/3 of the country. Are coppers now really as dumb as this?
He left his old wig here. A cheap nylon hairpiece circa 1972. An early Engelbert Humperdinck, I should say. In need of renovation.
Renovation? It's got real dandruff.
It's not in the best of condition.
I've seen better-looking rats down the old East India dock. Hey, Jones, try it on.
Me? What have I done?
Do you want a list? We're trying to picture the face beneath this apparition. Now, try it on.
Now, it's kind of tenuous, but it's worth playing Minder, of course, any day of the week. You might have just been... You're a couple of months younger than me, I know that, Oscar, so I say this every time. So you might have missed the brilliance and the joy of Minder, but that was... I'm trying to think of the copper's name. Might have been... Oh, it's gone, but it will come to me. Chisholm, that was his name. It was just a great cameo character. It was a brilliant show, and that clip really just highlights the difficulty the police have in getting their act together, and in this case, when it comes to solving that curious crime of burglary.
You were showing your age on two counts then, because you used a reference point that I'd never heard of, and then you forgot the name of the character. So
I know I did, yeah. So did I redeem myself then? I don't remember it that well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But no, on the issue itself, there are certain crimes that it is not overstating it to say are effectively decriminalised here. Personal theft. I mean, phone theft is, even Morgan McSweeney has found out it is a complete and utter joke. And burglaries, which I think, of course, not necessarily violent, of course it can be, is one of the most horrible things that could happen to a family. You build a family home, everything that you assemble in that house, the memories, and someone walks in off the street and rips it right out your house and will see no justice for it whatsoever. And I think it is entirely depressing. I think it's really sad that, it'd be interesting to know what you listeners and viewers think. Do they even bother reporting it? I mean, genuinely, that lack of faith that anything will get done. You just kind of go, well, I don't know, hopefully we've got insurance,
I can't work out, though, Oscar, what actually happened here, because we now have the same amount of coppers that we used to have. I think we got slightly more. So it's not a numbers thing. So are we just having so many more burglaries? Is it... I mean, what did they do before? I've said this story. I think in my brain, I've kind of probably slightly exaggerated it through the lens of time. But when I was a kid, the house about 5 doors down was robbed. And I swear there was like police tape outside the house. There was like 3 police cars, CSI officers going in. You know, the local news channel were down there. You know, goodness knows what. I mean, the whole thing. They threw the book at it, you know, to try and solve the case. And it went on for weeks. And, oh, yeah, then they finally arrested a couple of young scamps in Folkestone or something. It was that kind of... It was a big story. This stuff isn't big stories anymore.
No, it really isn't. And it should be easier now. You know, most people have doorbell ring technology where you can, you know, see people, you know, like in terms of like finding people, it should be so much easier than it was, you know, 30, 40 years ago, for God's sake. I imagine it's resourcing. I imagine it's priorities. I don't have the figures to hand, but I would guess we are unfortunately a far more violent society than we were 30 or 40 years ago, perhaps. So I think violent crime is probably prioritized. It is entirely depressing, and I hate to sound like some old Tory, but because, oh my God, did the Tories do a good job on this? Absolutely not. So I mean small c conservative here, not the party, but as a society. And we can talk for hours about the reasons why, you know, standards have just got lower. People tolerate things they shouldn't tolerate, and people do things that they shouldn't do. And, you know, that obviously that extends to things like burglary and theft, and it's antisocial behavior. It is, you know, even the crimes of, you know, a ruined bus shelter in some village somewhere, or, you know, walls that are defaced with graffiti, you know, in a quaint countryside, you know, like people just turn a blind eye to it now. And it's really, really, don't get me wrong, the people who live there don't, but for some reason as a country, we go, yeah, we can't help, we can't solve that right now. And it's entirely depressing. And to tell you what, last thing on this, on a political point, if there's a party that can, by the time the next general election comes around, of course there are so many competing issues, but can convince the public that actually, you know what, burglary will be resourced, phone theft, you will get in prison for that. If you get on the tube or you get on a train and you don't bother paying because you don't think that applies to you, you will be prosecuted. That is a crime. Would get a lot of votes if there's a party that can talk to people on those terms. Indeed,
yeah. If that could come through and cut through. We've got Robert Jenrick on with us a little later in the studio. We'll put some of this to him as well. If you can break through with that message convincingly, you could almost be home and dry at the ballot box. Just a final one to finish on then, Oscar. So the Scott Mills Breakfast, that's my new jingle. I start there on Monday over there at Radio 2. Loved it here around at Talk Towers. It's been fantastic for the last, I don't know, 7 years or something. But the time has come to, you know, Scott's made way for, I don't know. No, and none of that is true. Can't think of anything more horrendous than having to play music. But Scott Mills, who's the biggest, you know, runs the biggest radio show pretty much in the country. Absolutely big signing in their context, in their world, has mysteriously been sacked. Lots of rumours online already. Let's not pursue those too much, but not a great look for the BBC, Oscar.
No, it isn't, and they will be hugely scarred and hugely wary of how they've handled issues around other talent at the channel, and all, I'm sure, all will come out in the wash. And you know, it's hard really to take a view on it when that happens, but it is another challenge. It keeps happening as well. It does keep happening, and it does make you think. And again, also, what I would say is I sometimes don't like the presumption of guilt with these things, you know, straight off the bat. So we will see, but just removing that, talking about the organisation itself, it does keep happening to them. And you do have to then question, you know, is there something that we are doing wrong here, or, you know, structurally, the way how we view talent and versus staff and the power dynamics and what we, you know, and for the new director, it's going to be, you know, it's yet another challenge for that organisation. A huge name, actually.
It's kind, I mean, he's in that world. If you don't care much for Radio 2 or for music radio, it doesn't mean very much. But in that world, he only got the gig about, I'm tempted to say just a little over a year ago or something like that. For them, it was a big signing. For them, it was doing really well already. It's quite kind of funny how the world works because of social media, isn't it? People already, big Scott Mills fans, it's outrageous. Rethink this, BBC. You don't know what he's done yet. And I promise you this, radio stations, TV, don't get rid of somebody. I promise you, I've done this job longer than most. They don't get rid of somebody unless there is a good reason. That is a fact of life. Why would you get rid of a big talent? I mean, you almost answer your own question, don't you? I mean, it's outrageous you've got rid of... There must be a reason, and the one you've been given or the one you've heard is probably not the full story. And that's what's likely to happen with this. You won't ever maybe get the full story.
Well, maybe not, but to kind of picking up on your point there, it must be relatively severe because, what it seems like, a pretty cut and shut, instantaneous sacking like this, no suspension, no, pending this or pending that. So they've obviously gone, we ain't taking any chances with this, whatever this may be. You've got to go right here, right now.
Correct.
And so it'll be interesting to see the full details if they do come out.
Well, maybe you put your name in the hat, Oscar. You never know. I can see you.
I've got more chance being the Tottenham manager, I think.
Well, no, there is a good chance of being a Tottenham manager. I mean, I think we should actually say. I know everybody's wheeling out the line of the fact that Liz Truss lasted longer than the Spurs manager, but it's always worth repeating that, isn't it? So. Love it.
Tottenham managers and Tory Prime Ministers.
Indeed. Listen, Oscar, always good to have you on. Thank you, Oscar Redrop. He was former senior advisor to Boris Johnson when he was Prime Minister over there at Number 10. We're going to get a word with Montgomery Toms in a couple of moments' time as well. Founder of Freedom Watch GB. He was on the rally on the Mall at the weekend. It's known as being on the Mally, apparently. Did you not know that? If you do a rally in the Mall, you're on the Mally. I thought everybody knew that little bit of Victorian cant. Apparently not. Montgomery will tell us what it's like to protest and be there amidst a sea of lefties. Details to come. Don't go anywhere. And this question, who exactly are the far right when they talk about the far right? Because anyone who appears to be not a socialist in the world of some of these people is on the far right. Funny times we live in. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This Talk. Brad says the police are too busy attending compulsory DEI training, says Brad in Cambridge. Matt's in Grimsby. What have the far right actually done? Have they blown up buses and tube trains that are full of people? I know who we should be protesting about, and it ain't the far right, says Matt. Yeah, I mean, that's just common sense, Matt. Unfortunately, common sense doesn't play a part in this argument because you'd never get the Zach Polanskis and the Zara Sultanas and half the half-wits that are at that protest on Saturday to acknowledge anything Matt's just said, even though it's actually a statement of fact. bizarre world we are in. Tens of thousands apparently attended at the weekend. I mean, the numbers differ wildly. It always happens with a protest, doesn't it? The person that organises the protest tells you that millions of people showed up, and then the old bill say, well, we've done our estimates, and it's very different. So the people that organise this Together Alliance, this sort of arch left-wing get-together, reckon 500,000 people showed up. The police put it at about 50,000. Either way, you know, tens of thousands, we could say that much. Demonstrators held signs like "Fight Ignorance, Not Immigrants," very good, and "Reject Racist Lies." Here's that bloke, I mean, we played this a little bit earlier on. Here's that bloke that didn't actually even know why he was there.
I just wanted to do the right thing, and I want to make a stand against racism. I want to make a stand against the far right, whoever they are supposed to be.
Whoever they're supposed to be. He didn't even know whoever they're supposed to be. Well, Montgomery Toms, our next guest, was down there at the protest, and he even asked someone this.
I'm counter-demoing you, but I'm here very peacefully just to get people's opinions.
Yes.
So, yeah, what is far right? What does that mean in your opinion?
I think far right is quite an imprecise term. Personally, I think people use that term to describe all manner of different people. I don't think necessarily it's the correct term to describe Farage, for example. I think Farage is actually sliding more and more towards the political centre ground, towards
I would agree.
Liberal
it's a problem,
politics,
isn't it?
Actually.
So, Montgomery is with us now. Good afternoon to you. So you copped to fairly reasonable protesters there, by the sounds of it.
By the start, at the beginning, yes. And I went down there essentially with a placard displaying the exact slogan that they have, but flipping it back on them, which is "Together we can unite against the far right." So I went with a placard that says "Together we can unite against the far left," to see how they feel when you lump them all together under this kind of vague term, which could be anything. That can mean
I mean, what could possibly upset 10,000 socialists with you walking around with your sign over your shoulder?
Well, it's true, but the thing is, you know, I'm always of the belief that we should, if we're going to be very vocal online, on X or other social medias, we should also have the ability to face these conversations in person on the ground. So I thought I would go along, attend, have this conversation, and I was there for about half an hour, and I actually did have some good conversations. Not that I agreed with anything they were saying, and maybe, you know, I planted some seeds, who knows. But what happens very quickly is there are a select group of people that are unable to debate, don't want to debate, so they just resort to assaulting you, being violent, or, of course, just calling you a far-right racist, Nazi, whatever, even though they don't even know my opinion. And of course, the question here is, you know, what does far right mean? So I was asking that exact question, you know, what does far right mean to you? And I got a different metric from everyone. But in general, if you believe in borders, you're suddenly far right.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I mean, you did. There were moments of heckling for you, weren't there? It wasn't all straightforward.
No. So yeah. So what happens next is quite absurd. So we are walking along, and people are starting to get a bit argy-bargy, and they start, you know, almost serenading me with their classic sort of chants, you know, "Say it loud, say it clear, refugees are welcome here." That's one of their favourites. And then crowds start to sort of generate around me as they start to sort of push me away from the demonstration. And very quickly what happens is they get violent. So they grabbed my placard, they flipped it over my head, they broke it in half, they pushed me, they were punching me, they shoved me. My friend, who had literally, may I add, turned up for about 4 or 5 minutes to do some independent journalism, turned up, he went, "What's going on?" I said, "Okay, things are getting a little bit heated here, so let's pull back, but don't be violent." But we were being shoved and pushed, so we just sort of resisted a little bit. And he was, and I appreciate it's very important that we have nuance, and we just, the case is not closed. But he was arrested, and this is my personal opinion, that it was completely two-tier. He was arrested for assault and tackled to the ground by about 6 police officers after we were mobbed by about 6, 7, give or take, left-wing crazy people, as simply as that. And we pushed back, and then they shouted to the police that we were far-right fascists and that we just assaulted them, and then he got arrested. It escalated so quickly, but it is utter insanity.
I mean, so
they've
been
charged.
Well, and I hope he's not charged. But I mean, the curiousness of the sort of hyperbole here. So you're not just you're far-right fascists. I mean, the fascists have arrived. I mean, goodness me. I mean, I know the short answer is these people are just dumb. They have no real understanding. If you engaged in even a vaguely in-depth conversation about politics, they'd probably be lost on the first sentence. But the idea that they kind of go straight for the cliche, I thought those cliches had kind of gone a few years ago, that nobody played that stupid game anymore. Yeah, you can joke about the fact that, you know, this person is a bit to the right, this person's a bit to the left. Satire is all about that. That's fine. But these people are angry and they're violent.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And what's worse is the two-tier policing. I mean, I've seen a lot of two-tier arrests while I've been doing my street work. And this is by far the most outrageous one, with zero grounds. The police weren't even there to witness. It was purely of statements someone made while we were being mobbed and attacked. Yeah. But they're still obsessed with these slurs. If you engage in a political discussion, very quickly you can root out that they essentially just don't want to take responsibility for anything. It really gets just reduced down to that. The state must sort it. People in power must sort it, which is the irony, right? Because I believe in small government and the individual, whereas they believe in big government, which, if you ask me, is very authoritarian and something I absolutely detest, which is what we're going to see if, God forbid, I don't expect this to happen, Green Party ever got close to power.
Well, let's have a listen to a left-wing MP. This is Zara Sultana, everyone's favourite go-to lefty. Let's see what we make of what she had to say. Here it is.
Look around you. We are the majority. This country belongs to us. So yes, we will defeat them at the ballot box, but when necessary, we fight them in the streets as well. Whose streets? Our streets. Whose streets? Our streets. The choice is clear. It is socialism or barbarism, and we must choose socialism.
So, interesting, Montgomery, there. It's socialism or barbarism, which is really, is that the choice you have as Brits when you wake up in the morning? You can be the socialist or a barbarous system. I mean, it's such a bizarre polarisation of choice. But she also goes on to say, of course, that they're the majority. They're the majority, and I find that rather curious.
Yeah, they're not the majority, It's a very complicated conversation. We could go on for hours, but I think that it's very telling that whenever I go to these demonstrations, violence tends to be the kind of state of nature for them. That's what they just opt for, not conversation, not rational debate, but opt for violence instead. And I think it's also interesting that Zach Polanski posted a video on the organisers' account saying that the right wing, not the far right, just the right wing, have no place on our streets. So that, combined with that speech just made there, just shows you the actual intentions. It looks virtuous. It looks nice. Yeah. We all want to be together. Well, what does that really mean? We can all be together apart from people like myself, people like you, the average ordinary Englishman whose country seems to just our country is being eroded bit by bit by bit by bit, and we're not allowed to have that opinion. Otherwise, guess what? Yeah. We're far-right fascists.
And it's kind of interesting, isn't it, that while people there's a couple of clips we've got of, as I mentioned, Sultana and others saying, you know, we're the majority. Well, if you look at, you know, opinion polls, clearly not the majority, because that's not what it's showing in terms of people's intent if there was an election tomorrow.
Absolutely. No, you're absolutely right. And even in terms of numbers, I mean, whatever you think, we had Unite the Kingdom, you know, not long ago. I can tell you there were more numbers there than there was at that demonstration. Have to give them some credit. I don't trust police statistics. I do think that they actually got a lot of people out on the streets, but doesn't even compare to what Unite the Kingdom had to offer. So in terms of ground numbers and in terms of polling, they live in this delusional idea that it's a cult.
Yep.
That it genuinely is a cult. The kind of world they live in is that they are somehow this virtuous machine which is going to save humanity, when actually they're quite the opposite. And they're incredibly dangerous. They're funny. You can't help but laugh, because when you're there, the conversations are so moronic, are so laughable, are so ridiculous. And the way that, I don't mean to judge people by the way they look, but there is a sort of stereotype that comes along with some of these far left stand-up to racism protesters, which just make you think, you know, this is almost looks like a clown show. But we shouldn't joke too much, because they may well be in the minority, but they're still having a huge amount of impact on the establishment, on the education system. Universities are completely captured by them, private organizations, business. This minority of people that we have been seeing, specifically over kind of since about 2016, kind of around Brexit times and all of that, we've seen over the past 10 years, this minority voice take over the majority.
Yeah.
So whilst even if we do agree they're in the minority, they still have so much influence and power. And they talk about multimillionaires and multi-billionaires. That's something they always...
They love that phrase, don't they? Multi-millionaires.
They just absolutely focus on it. But who are they funded by? Well, George Soros, I can tell you, puts a lot of money in the direction of far-left protests and activists. So where do they get their money from? A lot of it is multimillionaires and multi-billionaires. So they're just, it's endless hypocrisy. And when you look at what, as I say, I reiterate, when you look at what socialism is, when you look at what it is to be left-wing, I think there's I know a lot of left-wing people who are great people. They're not bad, but ultimately, when you reduce their philosophy down to something, it tends to be that they don't want to take on responsibility for their own lives, and they want to instead look towards the state and government. And I say, no, I want to take responsibility. I believe in being an individual, and I don't know why that's a far-right thing to say.
It's a completely fair point. Listen, Montgomery, great to have you on. Glad you're not battered and bruised. I hope your mate gets through the arrest that took place. I think that's Montgomery Toms, by the way, founder of Freedom Watch GP. I think what happens with the police, in fairness to the police, they take the path of least resistance. So if there's one sort of vague right-winger in the melee of a couple of dozen left-wingers, even if it looks like the pylon is on the right-winger, it's easier to take him away than it is to try and take 24 lefties away. And speaking of which, are there some... If you were at the rally at the weekend, I know this is quite a big ask, we might fire up our socialist DAR in a second. We've got a little joystick here in the studio where we can spot where the socialists live who are listening to us now. Finn's just fired it up. Oh, there's one in Ramsgate. A lady in Ramsgate. Yeah. Called Bethany. Bethany, who probably knits hats for ferrets going through cancer treatment or something. Yeah, Bethany, call us now. If you were there at the weekend at the rally, I want to hear from you. Fair hearing from you as well. I do find it a kind of... All elements of extremism, and I don't use that as a pejorative, whether it's left or right, are a bit wacky, OK? Because they usually dine out on a little bit of exaggeration, in some cases quite a lot of exaggeration, sometimes out-and-out lies, and you don't tend to find the real kernel of truth in the arguments if you rely on the kind of more extreme versions of a political ideology. That's kind of mostly how it works. Being a left-winger is something you have to subscribe to. Being a right-winger is just an instinctive part of human nature. So that's why the right, in that sense, will usually win over and have done historically. And the left have only ever got into power, Blair and even Starmer to begin with, because people thought, well, maybe they're not wacky left-wing. They're not Michael Foot or Kinnock. They're something slightly different. But in terms of your pure socialist parties, I don't understand why that Zach Polanski fella is doing well. He looks like a toothless simpleton. I've got no idea how this fella is somehow riding high in the... He's got no charisma whatsoever, but somehow there is a bit of a gravitation to the Green Party. No one can figure that out. Bad news for Keir Starmer, so that's the good news for the rest of us, but tricky news for the next election. Thoughts on all of this, and who are the far right these people are arguing against? 0344 499 1000.
breaking news and Talk Breakfast. Two men, aged 47 and 45, have in the last hour been arrested in connection with the Golders Green arson attack. To me, symbolising absolutely a rise in anti-Semitism. Again, nothing from the government.
Breaking news. It's just a small matter. They have just an announcement saying transgender girls, i.e. boys, they must leave girl guiding by this September the 6th.
We are buying from Norway because they fully exploit their share of the North Sea oil and gas fields, and we don't. Alice in Wonderland nuts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. 0344 499 1000. Dave says, Dave's in Northampton, all these lefties who protested in London will be the same people who will be rioting in the streets if Reform wins the next general election, shouting, "Not in my name." He's not my Prime Minister. Well, he is, actually. This from Alison in Billericay. If Sultana thinks this country belongs to her, why doesn't she care about anything but Gaza? She'll lose her seat at the next election anyway, thank goodness. Isn't it just a bit weird to hear politicians? There's nothing, by the way, you can all have your projects that you feel strongly about, and there are obviously international narratives that you would gravitate to, and there's nothing wrong with that either. But when you base your entire ideology on a medieval death cult like Hamas, and you're waving Palestinian flags, and you're talking about no borders, you think, who are you? I don't know anybody that follows this kind of caper. Let's go to Mark in Lincolnshire. What have you got for us, Mark? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian.
Hiya.
How you doing?
All right, thanks.
Cool. Yeah, what have I got for you? Far right and, well, the far left and their use of far right.
Yeah.
Which, as Montgomery was saying, means anybody, really. You know, it's essentially, they have all these magic words they like to use, which aren't really, I mean, as I was just saying to your man there a minute ago, it's not about whether you agree with them. It's about complying with them at the end of the day, because they're not afraid to use violence to make you comply. You know, it's just, as I say, they're insane.
Well, the trouble is, just to pick up, Mark, just on that point about not afraid to use violence, there's very good reason for that, of course, because these people not only think they're right intellectually, they think they're right morally. So if you punch someone who disagrees with them, you're punching up from their position. It's a bit like saying, I punched Saddam Hussein. You know, no one's going to have a go at you for that. That's how they look at it. The argument is as simple as that. You know, these people are not human, would be their position. So if you punch one, kick one, give them a right old pasting, that's fine, because it's for the greater good. They're mental.
Yeah, well, this is why they use words like Nazi, don't they?
Yeah.
You know,
far-right fascists, because Montgomery Toms showed up. Good Lord.
Yeah, it's dehumanising language at the end of the day. You know, it's where we go from this point on at the end of the day. Who are we going to put in charge that will deal with this problem sufficiently?
Yeah.
You know, and that's where I have real questions and real concerns about reform. I always have. I've always been quite honest about that. You know, so you've got to really ask these kind of questions, because, you know, I'm not sure, as I've said before to you, Ian, Reform's language is just so incoherent and messed up.
Yep.
You know, I don't really have that much faith that they're going to actually be able to tackle these kind of issues.
Yeah. When
it comes to trying to do deportations or anything like that, this lot are going to be going crazy.
I think, deporting people who shouldn't be here should not be controversial, right? I mean, that should be the standard.
But it will be to these people.
Yeah, but I don't know whether we're going to see anything like, you know, some sort of ice going around people's houses. We're not going to see any of that, are we? I know some people want to see that. I promise you, we will not see any of that.
It depends how it goes at the end of the day, Ian.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know till we get to that point, do we, at the end of the day? I think there's potential for that to happen ultimately, because, you know, at the end of the day, the ideal scenario would be that you get a lot of self-deportation. So once you start taking away, you know, benefits of them being here.
But you can only do that to illegal. You can only do that to people who are here illegally, can't you?
And foreigners, yeah.
But well, you don't want to just get rid of foreigners, because I mean, you might just be here on holiday with your mum.
No, it depends. It depends what you're referring to as foreigner.
But if you're a foreigner that's legal,
when you're saying illegals, what are you talking about? Are you talking about the boat people? Are you talking about...
Well, you're talking about people who came across on boats, you're talking about people who overstayed their visas, you're talking about students who came on one visa, or workers who came on one visa and then transferred it to another one, students that went to iffy universities, all of that group of people. What you're not talking about is going into places and just getting rid of people because their country of origin was a different place.
So what are you going to do with the 3 million from the Boris wave, Ian? Where vast number of those people came over here on the back of somebody else's work visa and they're just straight on the benefit system.
I don't know whether 3 million people did that.
It won't be all 3 million.
You'd have had to have come over on a visa, and if you came across on somebody else's visa, then you committed a criminal offence, right? So you should go.
No, they would have come as family, wouldn't they? From somebody else.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So if they came along with someone else. See, that's the group that I don't imagine reform would be able to tackle.
Yeah, whereas we saw Britain will.
Well, will they? I mean, let's assume they were the government. They might have every intention of doing that. The pragmatics of it are something else. But listen, Mark, you raise a brilliant point about, you know, could anyone ever be that robust with immigration? Great call, Mark. Thank you very much indeed. Carl in Liverpool. We've not got long, Carl, but I know you can do it. What are you thinking?
Good afternoon, Ian.
Afternoon.
Zara Sultana, that clip you played earlier on, she's inciting violence there when she says and if so on the streets.
Yes.
You know, Lucy Connolly was locked up for a lot less.
Yeah.
It beggars belief, these people, the way they can come together with so much hatred against the extreme. I don't know who the extreme far right is, because we don't see the extreme far right or far right attacking people on the streets, setting fire to ambulances and beating people up at protests and stuff. It's just gone above and beyond now, and it needs to stop. I don't like banning marches, but that march the other day was filled with so much hatred. Those sort of marches need to be banned, and if it's not a Union Jack or the St George's flag, it shouldn't be getting flown in this country. I'm fed up with it, Ian.
Yeah, I think that whole thing of flying Palestinian flags is just a bit weird. Maybe we can just ban marches that include Lenny Henry and Polona Faith. Maybe that's the criteria. Great call, Carl. Thank you for that. Let's get the news at 2.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yes, welcome back to the home of Common Sense. What have we got here? We're discussing who are the far right. Tens of thousands marched in central London on Saturday against what they referred to as the far right. But who specifically are they? The demonstration featured anti-racist placards and support from figures like Sir Lenny Henry, Paloma Faith and Zara Sultana. The event followed last year's Unite the Kingdom rally, which also drew over 100,000 people. More comments on that. Also this afternoon, MPs and benefit claimants are both set to receive significant pay rises this week to combat the cost of living crisis, despite Rachel Reeves dismissing widespread aid for families facing an energy crisis due to the war in the Middle East. MPs will still get their 5% pay rise, including £3,300 cost of living adjustment. Yeah, it does stick in the throat a bit. What's the reality of all of that? And a Sun investigation can reveal that police across Britain failed to solve a colossal 92% of all burglaries last year. In fact, in 1/3 of the country, 0 cases were cracked. This is a pretty terrible indictment of our system at the moment. Burglaries have been relegated to almost a non-crime, it seems. If you've been on the receiving end of inaction, if that makes sense, then lines open on that, 0344 499 1000. We'll go to more of your calls as well in just a moment too. Lots to come in. We'll discuss all sorts of issues around those big stories. Some great guests with us. Robert Jenrick's in the studio a little later as well. Now, this week, both benefit claimants and MPs, an interesting cross-section of sectors. Members of Parliament receive a major cost of living boost, despite Rachel Reeves recently rejecting widespread support, of course, for the energy emergency caused by the war with Iran. MPs, as I mentioned, are due for that 3,300% cost of living adjustment. But don't worry, everything's fine and dandy. Don't listen to me. Here's the Chancellor.
I reduced the costs and in fact cancelled the eco scheme altogether, which means that that cost no longer needs to be paid for by bill payers or indeed by taxpayers. So those are the changes that I made in the budget last year, which would take £150 off people's energy bills, and Ofgem have confirmed today that bills will be falling by around 7% from April the 1st this year, taking money off people's energy bills, and that is alongside the freeze in prescription charges and the freeze in rail fares that I set out in the budget.
How many people are feeling those benefits? Let's speak with Jonathan Portes, Professor of Economics, King's College. Jonathan, good afternoon to you. Always nice to have you with us. Everybody, of course, is an armchair chancellor. We've all got our big to-do list of things we'd like to achieve, and I'm pretty sure, and I'm sure we discussed this before, that when you do become a chancellor, Rachel Reeves or Jeremy Hunt, whoever it happens to be, you go into that big ornate office with that to-do list, and then a bunch of people come in, permanent secretaries, goodness knows who else, and go, whatever you're thinking, unthink it, please, because these are the realities. Is it as brutal as that, do you think?
Well, it certainly is pretty brutal at the moment because, what Reeves said just now about some of the measures she's taken, of course, is true. And some people, we still are generally having relatively healthy earnings growth across the board. As you say, pensions and some benefits are going up this April. Overall, for most households, things aren't too bad, but we have not had the effect of Trump's war and Trump's inflation yet. And unfortunately for Rachel Reeves, of course, that is not under her control. And the impact of a sharp rise in energy prices is simply to make the country overall significantly poorer. And there is nothing she can do about that. She can redistribute the pain to some extent in order to help the most vulnerable, but she can't argue with unfortunately, change the basic arithmetic, which is the consequences of Trump's, adventurism, is that we are all going to be poorer. And of course, we don't know yet how bad that's going to be because it depends how long his war goes on and just how much disruption it does cause to energy and other supplies.
And I guess the basic, this is sort of Janet and John style economic explanation here, but the basic reality of things when you're, the Chancellor, when you're the government, is that there is X amount of money to spend, and you can borrow some, you can be a bit creative around other areas, but broadly speaking, we've seen this through Conservatives and Labour, a little bit taken from that department to that department. Not really hugely significant changes, just a little tinkering around the edges. There is X amount to spend, and that's the long and short of it, right?
Well, as you say, it's not quite X, and the government is not like a household. It lives forever, and it can raise tax revenue, and of course, ultimately, the Bank of England control. We borrow in our own currency, which we print. So the constraints are a bit more complicated than that. But you're right, the constraints are very real, and they are particularly real at the moment because of the international environment. The Chancellor does indeed have very limited room to maneuver. And unfortunately, so that means that, as you say, particularly in context like this, the constraints are very real, and she can move money around, she can redistribute the pain, but she can't stop the pain. There is pain coming, unfortunately, and it's going to hit most of us in one way or another.
Jonathan, what do you make of suggestions that often come through about having kind of just a different, recalibrating, if you like, the tax system? There's this organisation called Patriotic Millionaires. As I'm sure you're aware, they argue that if you lob X amount of taxation on, I think it's not just income, but assets over 10 million or something, it will raise 62 trillion pounds a second or something like that. You get these kind of... Then there's the other more basic school of thought that if you just have another layer of taxation on top of our current top rate, that would raise X again. No Chancellor ever seems to be seduced by these rather big initiatives. Is it because they're bonkers and don't work? Is it because they're electorally dangerous for parties? Or is there another reason?
I think it's largely because, although they're not completely mad, I think bonkers and don't work is a bit of an overstatement, but it would be extremely difficult to implement major new taxes on wealth in a way which wouldn't lead to people fleeing the country or to reduced investment, and they would raise only a limited amount of money. There are countries that have some form of wealth tax. They're not completely impractical, but they don't solve the basic problem. And the basic problem is that actually, if we want quality, reasonably good quality public services in a context when we're getting we're living longer, we're getting older on average, fertility is reducing, then all of us, especially people, like me or you, who are not in the super rich multimillionaire class, I assume you're not, I'm not quite, but who are doing perfectly well and have a pretty comfortable standard of living. Yeah. It's people like us, actually, who who will have to pay more if we want to finance the services we want. And actually, politicians have to go out and make that argument. Yeah. I do think, and I think this is one of the things that I personally am a bit disappointed by this government, is that there has been a lack of tax reform. The idea of the tax system, as well as is just the current British tax system is not very well structured at all. It has all sorts of very strange and inefficient features that mean you can earn a bit more and pay a lot more tax for no particularly good reason at all. We have a council tax system, which, as everyone knows, was invented on the back of an envelope in the early 1990s to solve the problems left by the poll tax and hasn't really been updated since then. So that's a mess as well. There are all these bits of the system where you could probably raise a bit more money and actually make people feel a bit better about paying tax, because the system wouldn't be so obviously crazy. And unfortunately, the government's done very little to address those issues.
I'm looking at it. I'm thinking the other day there was you perhaps saw Ed Miliband having that kind of gotcha moment with Laura Kuenssberg when she showed him the pie chart of petrol taxation, and of course the politicians of all colours talk about this sort of we're going to cap the rise and things like that, when actually the bigger story is that over 50% of that litre of petrol is taken by the government. They then take taxation, of course, off the retailers and all the other component parts of it. So they're probably trousering about 60% of every litre. And, of course, what you really want the government to do is go, do you know what, we're going to reduce that to 10%. So your litre of petrol is now going to cost you 80p. Fantastic. Everybody would be happy, but, of course, the Treasury would go, that's fine, but you do realise you've wiped 200 billion quid off the coffers. Well, I tell you what, here's another idea. For those who can afford it, it's going to be 50 quid to see a GP, like they do in Ireland, like they do in many other, Australia, for example. Are those initiatives too complicated, do you think, or do they not produce the kind of money we'd like to think they do?
Well, I mean, I think, reducing tax on fossil fuels seems, frankly, completely insane, right? We both require that money for public services, and of course, there's this huge national security imperative, as well as a global climate imperative, to reduce the amount of fossil fuels we consume. So the idea of promoting consumption by having huge cuts in taxation on fossil fuels seems to me to be that would be a lose-lose for the economy. But there is a view.
No, I hear what you're saying, Jonathan. There is a political view that actually, why not? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there are parties at the moment advocating more fossil fuels. So in that respect, and I'm looking at this other story that we should move on to, of Britain's white van workers who are bleeding cash because diesel in particular, I don't know much about petroleum and how it's engineered and produced, but I've always found it a bit curious, just as sort of an onlooker looking at that big sign in the petrol station, as to why diesel is so much more expensive. It surged 26p a litre more than petrol, and one garage in Kent is charging £1.95 for a litre of diesel. Britain's workers, white van man, the backbone, Jonathan, of this country, are suffering.
Actually, I have some personal responsibility here, because when I joined the Treasury in the late 1980s, under Mrs. Thatcher, who, of course, actually took environmental issues very seriously and made that famous speech about global warming back in the late 80s, diesel was actually cheaper than petrol because we effectively gave it a tax break. And I and colleagues at the Treasury looked at that. I was very young at the time, and concluded that actually from an environmental point of view, this was completely insane. And if anything, it should be the other way around. And over
time,
it's
your fault, Jonathan.
I certainly would be proud to claim some responsibility for that. Yes, diesel is an extremely nasty polluting fuel, and it's right that it should be taxed a bit more. But if we want to help white men and women and small businesses in general, there are other ways of doing it that don't involve subsidizing them to use more of a polluting fuel. Now, you may need to smooth that transition, but over time, that is the way to go.
But is it not? I mean, I'm quite fascinated by the Chinese system at the moment. I think everybody's sort of fascinated on varying levels by the Chinese system in all sorts of shapes and forms. But the idea that they seem to have come up with this kind of hybrid model where they are producing goodness knows how much coal and all manner of unsavoury fossil fuel elements to their economy, which that's how some people would see it, others don't. But their argument is we're simultaneously producing more windmills and solar panels. We're just not going to cut off our nose to spite our face. We're going to use what we've got. It's going to run out at some point. In the meantime, running parallel with that stuff, we'll have the new, more innovative and cleaner ways of energising our country and our economy. But we're not going to throw the other stuff away.
Well, but they are. I mean, China actually reduced its consumption of fossil fuels last year, I believe, for the first time ever, and they intend to continue to do that. I mean, they are going much, much faster in that direction.
But they are still streets ahead of anyone else. I know it's not a league table in that respect, but you take my point.
But they are reducing their, their switch from fossil fuels to renewable energy and electricity has been much, much faster than any of us predicted or would have expected 10 or 15 years ago. And of course, there is actually a genuine sort of threat to UK and European car sector from the success of the Chinese electric vehicles, which of course is based on their access to the very large domestic Chinese market. And our real challenge is how to keep up with them in terms of electricity. And then on the other hand, of course, you have Trump, who seems, who's clearly completely lost his grip on reality in this respect, talking about the Chinese not having wind farms, when of course we know they have installed far more than almost anyone else over the last few years.
That is true. Jonathan, always good to get your gauge on these things. Great to talk to you. Jonathan Portes, Professor of Economics, King's College London. Thank you to him. He's a fan or a supporter of getting rid of things like diesel. But it is interesting that in China, it's around about 90p a litre. 90p a litre in China. Over here, £1.95. And there is a good reason for that. What Jonathan said is factually correct. They are using less fossil fuels than they were, but they are still using a seismic amount of fossil fuels, way in excess of anything the Western economies produce, even collectively. So, yeah, they're changing. Nothing wrong with a change, by the way. The argument most of us have made against the sort of Ed Miliband evangelical approach to all of this is run things in tandem. Who doesn't want cleaner fuel, cleaner energy, what will eventually be cheaper? We all want that. It's just the argument of how we get there, and do we eradicate almost what is literally underneath our feet at the moment. It's not going to last forever, but right now, that kind of stuff is an assistance. Do you use that first? And while you're modifying the new technology and getting it to a point where it can work, do you not just retain the status quo? That's what China have largely done. 0344 499 1000. If you are white van man, by the way, and know what it's like to be absolutely stung in the watsits by the cost of diesel, I'm all ears at this end. And wasn't that interesting that Jonathan Portes told us there that he was one of the advisors in the Treasury under Thatcher when diesel was taxed further? More from you on the way. 0344 499 1000.
Breaking news on Talk Breakfast. Two men, aged 47 and 45, have in the last hour been arrested in connection with the Golders Green arson attack, to me symbolising absolutely a rise in anti-Semitism. Again, nothing from the government.
Breaking news. It's just a small matter. They have just an announcement saying transgender girls, i.e. boys, they must leave girl guiding by this September the 6th.
We are buying from Norway because they fully exploit their share of the North Sea oil and gas fields, and we don't. Alice in Wonderland nuts.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Nigel says, afternoon, Ian. Britain has the highest electricity prices in the world. Surely saving 200 quid a year under the Conservatives will leave Brits in exactly the same position on these prices. I can only imagine that, irrelevant of what happens across the planet, that 200 quid won't be asked to spend. It will be gone in another bill, tax or insurance increase. I wonder whether maybe we're looking for something just a bit more honest in terms of how we're taxed. I'm under no illusions now when I look at the welfare bill alone, and of course that's just one department, happens to be, I think, the biggest in terms of not just the amount that is spent on welfare, but the huge, unprecedented increases in what we spend on welfare. Have we not just got to be honest and go, right, if we're going to solve this, then we have to either increase taxation or find a different way of doing things? So I keep coming back to that, you know, it's 50 quid to go and see for a GP appointment. There will be exemptions to that, obviously, pensioners, people who can't work, people who are not in work, etc., students, whatever, you know, the same way as there are with opticians. Would that work? Does that raise a significant amount of money? If it's an online consultation, it's 20 quid. I don't know, something of that order. It ain't that controversial. Ireland do it, Australia do it, loads of other countries do it. In terms of their health systems, better outcomes in many of our equivalent economies across the EU, like Germany and Spain, two obvious examples that have really good health outcomes, particularly with cancer and heart disease. They have a different system of working. It's not a private system, it's an insurance-based system, but it still works, and it works better. What are the reasons we don't just adopt that? I just wonder if we've just got to go bigger in the way we do things and braver in order to have a reality check. I don't mind spending more money on something if it's in the right place. I would rather give 50 quid to a GP for an appointment than I would the money I give to the petrol station forecourt to fill up my car. That resonates with me. Now, other people will have their own ideas of what is fairer, but for me, that would work better. I go, yeah, absolutely bang on. I get that. Maybe it wouldn't work at all. Kevin is in Basingstoke. Kevin, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Yeah, afternoon. Yeah, you asked the question, who are the far right?
Yeah, who are the far right? Come on, Kevin, help us out here.
The far right is Trump, Steve Bannon, Elon Musk. They're fueling the far right over here, aren't they? I mean, Donald Trump did actually say that he's supporting far right parties in Europe, like Reform, AfD, Le Pen in France, Viktor Orban.
But hang on, you said. I mean, there are parties. I mean, Le Pen was, you know, previously National Front, whatever they're called. I think they've slightly changed their name, but that lot. But you put Reform in that group.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're our far right party, aren't they? There's no one more far right in politics than Reform UK. I mean,
how are they just out of interest? How are they far right? I mean, the lady I bump into in the gym votes Reform. I mean, she's definitely not far right.
Well, no, I mean, the thing is with Le Pen, I mean, in France, I mean, it was her father that used to be sort of ran that party.
It was.
But they never used to get very far. But so what she's done, she's toned it down a bit.
She's toned it down. She's not even advocating to leave the EU, which is interesting. But tell me about Reform. What is it? Why are they far right?
Well, because they've toned it down and now because she has toned it down, she's doing really well, and I think Nigel Farage has learned that lesson. That's why, you know, when there's somebody like Rupert Lowe in the party, he gets rid of him.
Well, I don't even know whether it's a lesson, because, you know, Reform's star was rising before they, and I don't know whether tone it down is the right way to look at it, or whether they've just had maybe a different sense of reality as they move towards the possibility of becoming the next government. But I'm intrigued by the far right bit, not because that's really a pejorative that an enemy would add. It's a word that you would use as a term of abuse or criticism, isn't it? Rather than right wing, they wouldn't deny their centre right credentials no more than Labour would deny their centre left. But far right suggests we're dealing with something nefarious and unpleasant.
Well, there's videos of Nigel Farage meeting Steve Bannon, and he's saying to Nigel that, you know, he wants Nigel to head up the far right in Europe.
Steve Bannon used to be the right-hand man to the President of America. Lots of people met Steve Bannon.
I know, but this is a one-to-one conversation.
Well, yeah, and lots of people would have had that. Why would you not have that?
Yeah, but it's saying that he wants Nigel to head the far right in Europe.
Well, he's not.
That's what the whole.
But he's not. I've never heard that before. That he's in charge of the far right of Europe. I mean, I don't even know what that means. I mean, maybe Steve Bannon did say that, but he doesn't speak now with any authority.
He wants him to set up a sort of like a movement of the far right.
I think Nigel Farage has got many more things going on than to set up a European movement.
No, he wants him to be sort of like be the main man, you know, because, I mean...
Well, that doesn't mean anything, does it? Steve Bannon wants Nigel Farage to be the main man. I don't think we can authenticate that statement, can we, Kevin?
Well, I mean, you asked me where it's coming from, and that's where I think it's coming from. That's where the... I mean...
But you're still maintaining, and I'm not criticising you for having this view, by the way, Kevin. You're still maintaining that Nigel Farage and Reform are a far-right party, and I'm just intrigued as to what it is that makes you believe that they are not just a party that's centre-right, but actually they're far-right. What is it you're hearing there?
Repatriation of people. Just, you know, that's a far-right policy.
I don't even know if that is a policy of Reform, to repatriate people.
Well, if you've been there 10, 20, 30 years, and for some reason you actually you lose your job, they want to send you back to, you know, the country of your birth.
I don't think that defines what they said, to be honest. And when Nigel Farage gave that speech attacking Rupert Lowe, saying that what Rupert Lowe was proposing wasn't just, as he saw it, impossible, but also immoral was the word he used.
But the thing is, that is just the tone. That is. But
why would that be? Why would even that be far right?
That is what I think. I mean, if you are far right, you don't have I mean, they say that the far right don't sort of march in with jackboots on. It's a slowly, isn't it? I mean, they want to get rid of our human rights and scrap the Equalities Act. That's a pretty extreme.
That's not right wing, though. I mean, I don't think anybody wants to scrap human rights. But that would be bizarre. It's about where you take your counsel from and what you're allowed to do and what you are not allowed to do in your own country because of international rules of law. That's about rewiring your human rights, not getting rid of it.
Yeah, but they're using asylum seekers as an excuse because they want to take it away, and that I mean.
But they want to take it away because of being impeded to do anything about certain issues where you want to either deport someone or someone shouldn't be here, a rapist that was allowed to stay because of a Human Rights Act. I mean, that's not unreasonable.
Without returns agreement, you wouldn't be able to return, you know, huge amounts of these people. It's only like it may be in a very tiny few cases, but they're making out, oh, we leave the USHR, we can send back all these thousands of people.
I think they know that there are still hurdles in the road you'd have to get through. To send somebody where? It's a good question. I don't know if it makes you far right to want to be able to control your own borders.
Well, it's more far right than anything we've got at the moment. I mean, why do they want to scrap the Equalities Act?
Well, it depends whether they think the Equality Act is working in Britain's favour or against it. And if there is a sense that we're not living in a meritocracy, but a sort of almost tacit dictatorship based on daft initiatives about, well, let's get the pie chart ticking all boxes, then, again, that's not... It might be, to you, bonkers, but it's not an act of evilness.
Is it working in Britain's interest? It's working for people in Britain.
Why would they do something that's not working in Britain's interest?
Well, because it's all about taking away people's rights.
Why would you want to take people? Why would Reform want to take away people's rights?
Because it's more profit for billionaires, isn't it?
So you really think they sit there in a room and go, "Oh yeah, let's make some billionaires happy"?
100%.
Really, you actually? So these are people, and one of them's coming in a moment. Robert Jenrick will be sitting opposite me in about 3 minutes' time, so I can put some of this to him. But I mean, it's a great, you know, it's a great sort of stereotypical left-wing myth, isn't it? To say, "Oh, they just want to help the millionaires and the billionaires," but would it be a bonkers situation, wouldn't it? What a strange situation to be.
That's why.
There's not enough of them. Well, you go, OK, we're going to run a whole government and a country to appease 200 people.
Ian, they're talking about bringing back the death penalty. So all these things.
We're not talking about bringing back the death penalty. No one said that.
Nigel Farage says we need to have a conversation.
What? That's a very different discussion, then, isn't it, than bringing back the death penalty?
About privatising the NHS as well.
Would you not want to bring back the death penalty for paedophiles and those that kill and torture children?
Well, that's not the point. You either bring it back or you don't. I mean, do we bring it back for people that, someone like Nathan Gill, that is a traitor to this country?
Would you bring back the death penalty? No, but I don't think anybody ever had the death penalty for that. Well, maybe back in the 1600s.
Well, there you go. That's what happens when you say we need to have a conversation. How far do you want this conversation to go?
So people who commit murder and paedophiles that rape and kill children would be subject to the death penalty. People who burgle houses wouldn't be.
What about somebody that sold, took bribes to speak up in the European Parliament to benefit...
You put them in jail for a long time.
Yeah, but I mean, that's what I'm saying. Where you can't just say we'll have the...
Well, you can, because that would be the conversation you'd have. So that's the whole thing about mature debate, isn't it? You debate in that way. You say, OK, this I believe... I mean, I don't think it would work either way, but for the benefit of this conversation, Kevin, you know, you would look at it and say, in most countries, whether it's America or China, you tend... I mean, in China, you can get killed for cattle rustling, for God's sake, but broadly speaking, in America, you only get executed only in certain states, and that's if you've killed someone. Killing is the criteria, not anything else.
People in this country are petrified of reform government. That's why.
Petrified of what? I mean, you say lots of people are.
You saw hundreds of thousands of people marching in London, wasn't it?
Yes, but they didn't know what they were marching for. They just said we're against the far right without being able to really authenticate. We're going to be against this evilness. It's like, what evilness? What is it that's happened? Have your arms fallen off because Nigel Farage exists?
All the time. The absolute hatred we hear all the time.
What hatred?
The things I hear people saying, like Ben Habib said, we shouldn't rescue people that are drowning in the sea.
That's almost dismissing the idea that some people can be far right. Some people can be. I was asking you about reform.
Yeah, well, he said it when he was in reform.
He's not in reform now, which might be an answer for you.
He said it when he was in reform.
Well, he might have said it, but he spoke as an individual when he said it, and I think he also. I've got a feeling that Ben backtracked when he said it as well. But that's another story.
Of course he did.
Well, why would you not?
He knew he went. That's what I mean by that when I said we know what they're like, but they know how far to go, and he just stepped over that line. He showed his true colours.
Some people will have that view.
I know they will.
Some people
are in reform.
And some people will have the view that millionaires should be executed.
Who said nobody thinks millionaires should?
I bet you if I walked in that crowd on Saturday, I could find someone who would say they should certainly have all their money taken off them and thrown in jail for crimes of exploitation. What exploitation? Well, you hired 30,000 people, gave them a job. Yeah, that, because they don't like, this idea, this myth of, it's a millionaire, etc. Listen, Kevin, you have been brilliant. I love locking horns. Thank you very much indeed. Kevin in Basingstoke, 0344 499 1000.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 22 minutes to 3 o'clock. This in from Michael in Norfolk. The far right is a figment of the left's imagination. To me, the far right were the likes of Benito Mussolini, says Michael. Yes, that's exactly it, isn't it? I mean, people who have a robust view on immigration are not far right. They might be more to the right than somebody on the far left, and we don't tend to use the far left as a pejorative in that same sense. I mean, all right, we mock it and we give it a little bit of welly. If somebody is advocating people drowning in the Channel, I don't know many right-wingers that are going to endorse that and go, yes, absolutely fine, mate, you shouldn't have come here. I don't want to see anybody drown. That's not us. We're meant to take a kind of a sort of morally superior position to stuff like that. But I don't want those people to be in the Channel in the first place. That's the point, isn't it? Now, that's not far right. That's just me wanting to protect our borders for whatever reason. Even if every single person in a boat was a decent, law-abiding person, even that, you'd say, yeah, well, that's not how you get into the UK. That's not OK. That's not a far-right position. And saying that there's a court somewhere, ECHR and the like, that is stopping you from doing it and wanting to come out of that agreement, that might have implications to it. But the principle of wanting to come out of that agreement, that's not far right either. And I keep making this point that we need to kind of redefine language. Stuff that, when people used, even just the word deportation has become people clutch their pearls when you're on the left, when you mention deportation. They're talking about deportations. Yes, they are talking about deportations because people who shouldn't be in a country will be deported. I mean, try it in a left-wing country, you'd still get deported. Matt's in Cheshire on all of this. Were you down there on the march at the weekend, Matt, with your left-wing credentials? Good afternoon.
No, I was comfortably at home in the horrible weather. Yeah. Can I just say, Ian, you've earned your money in the last hour. I can say that much. That is, I've got a few. I rang with something else, but I just wanted to come back on some of the things that your last guest said.
Yes.
One, Reform has said they will replace the Human Rights Act with a Bill of Rights for British citizens. Yep. Steve Bannon is a nationalist populist and openly promotes that in Europe. Geert Wilders and David Duke are the far right, and everybody in the right mind knows that.
Good point.
In the minds of the easily duped, I am the far right because I believe in a moratorium on immigration and mass deportations. And the last thing, I wrote this about 2 months ago, the whole purpose of Marxism is not to beat or disprove fascists, but to create them, to have a forever enemy, to prop up and oppose their rudderless, failed and worthless ideology.
Yeah.
To keep the alternative alive and avoid the spotlight on their own ideas. This is entirely why the so-called left of today continually mention and perpetuate the idea of fascism. In all reality, there is more fascism in the ideas and ideals of the disfigured illness of modern socialism than the invisible reality of fascism.
The disfigured illness. What a great... That's poetic. Than the, what was it, your disfigured illness more in the left than there is in the invisible reality, did you say, of the right?
The invisible reality, yeah. It doesn't exist, does it?
Well, it really doesn't exist. I mean, what's interesting, the only good thing about being a Conservative at the moment is that you can at least go, I don't have to have that far-right label thrown at me anymore because that's now gone to another party. But the Tories used to get this. I mean, think of Boris Johnson, man. I mean, Boris Johnson, before he came to prominence and took on the Leave the EU mantle, before that, if you'd have gone round the country with a clipboard and said, name me a right-wing, just a right, not a far-right, just a right-wing Conservative, you'd have gone through hundreds of people before anyone mentioned the name Boris Johnson, right? I mean, it just wouldn't have been there. He was a very liberal mayor. He, was pro, in terms of the immigration. The word I always forget when you want to allow an amnesty on immigration. He was for all of that. This was not a bloke that was not... As soon as he took up the mantle of advocating leaving the EU, which, by the way, I don't believe he believed a word of it, But nonetheless, he became a far-right Conservative. So that's largely gone for the Tories now, and now Reform have to battle with it.
He was a liberal centrist, and since Corbyn introduced that kind of campaigning technique for Labour, where they basically just disparage anybody that isn't a left-wing Islamist and call them a Nazi, a jackboot lover. It's just basically it's a 1960s European Marxist tactic.
It really is. It really is. And when you look at what the sultanas and the like of this world were saying at the weekend, I mean, it was, you know, it's not even hidden. I mean, they say it out loud, these people, and expect to be taken seriously.
Everyone on my estate is far right. All the old pensioners who have all retired, live in nice bungalows with big, lovely gardens, they're all far right. Yeah. Nearly everybody in my town is far right on that basis.
Anyone that was... including
Indian people.
No, indeed. There was a big Indian contingent on the referendum, of course, back in 2016. And, of course, even people who are protesting against sex offenders in hotels, women and mothers and sisters and the like are far right too. I mean, it's just it's beyond bonkers.
If I had my way in, I wouldn't even engage with them. But I know if you run a TV channel and a media outlet, you have to engage with them for balance.
Well, it was nice to talk to Kevin, because obviously by definition we don't get loads of left-wing callers, and every now and again, and I'm sure Kevin is a perfectly reasonable bloke, and if you and I had a pint with him, Matt, we'd probably have a lovely evening together. Who knows? But I don't. But I do like to lock horns with that ideology, because you know you're on fairly safe ground, because so much of what people think on the left is an invented, as you called it, a disfigured kind of belief system that doesn't hold up to any scrutiny.
With you, Ian. He was having a conversation with you. He wasn't just shutting down and being an outright lunatic like the people on those marches.
Yeah. Well, they came out with the clip we didn't get to play because it was marred by lots of other noise, but there was the clip of I think it was a woman that said, you know, they're taking money off the working classes to give to the billionaires. I mean, that's a great left-wing cliche line that bears no resemblance to any reality anywhere. But it doesn't stop it being wheeled out left, right and flipping centre, mostly right. Matt, thank you. We've got to move. Robert Jenrick in with us next here on Talk.
Breaking news and Talk Breakfast. Two men, aged 47 and 45, have in the last hour been arrested in connection with the Golders Green arson attack, to me symbolising absolutely a rise in anti-Semitism. Again, nothing from the government.
Breaking news. It's just a small matter. They have just an announcement saying transgender girls, i.e. boys, they must leave girl guiding by this September the 6th.
We are buying from Norway because they fully exploit their share of the North Sea oil and gas fields, and we don't. Alice in Wonderland nuts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is indeed Talk, 12 minutes to 3 o'clock. And Robert Jenrick, MP, has just joined us, Reform UK Shadow Chancellor. Robert, good to see you. I must get a word just very quickly. I doubt whether you were on that left-wing march at the weekend. I'm just checking.
No, I had other things to do, unfortunately.
You were cutting your nails
I wasn't
again,
invited to be one of the
weren't.
platform speakers. Zach and Zara decided to
What a
exclude
pairing.
me.
What a pairing. The wider debate we've been having here this afternoon is just about that whole kind of... We're asking the question, what is this kind of far right, which is, a bit of a fiction, really. The Conservative used to get a lot of it. The Reform still get a lot of it as well. Anybody who's more left-wing than Jeremy Corbyn is apparently a far-right activist.
Sure. This is the common ground of British politics.
Yes.
There's a silent majority of people out there who, unsurprisingly, want to see secure borders, safe and clean streets. They want to try and keep their taxes down by cutting waste and getting people off welfare into work. They actually want us to have some armed forces that aren't humiliated routinely on the world stage. And they don't want their kids to be taught to denigrate and loathe our national history and heritage. That is what Reform stands for.
Sure.
That is what I think a majority of people in this country want to see a government actually deliver.
Well, Kevin in Basingstoke was a previous caller. He was a left-wing caller, and it was great to chat with him. And you must know this from your time in Parliament. You meet some unlikely characters that aren't of the same stripe, who are really nice people, and you get on really quite well with, and you end up having, certainly when I was in the press gallery, I used to think all those MPs I thought I was going to hate are actually all right, and the ones that I thought were going to be brilliant were sometimes a little bit iffy. There's a bit of that going on. So it's great that you can have debate with people with different views. But dear old Kevin in Basingstoke, Robert, was saying, he thought Reform were far right because because of immigration policy, leaving the ECHR. He had another theory. I can't remember what it was now. He had a big old list of things that you guys are going to do that was a very bad thing indeed.
Well, look, there's nothing...
What do you say to Kevin in Basingstoke?
Look, what we want to see is just common sense return to our country.
Yeah.
And the experience I had when I was in government, made me very, very angry about the state of things in this country, because I do think that the government should be able to get a foreign criminal out of our prison and back home to their own country. Our security services shouldn't be trailing around after terrorists who are literally living amongst us because they can't be removed because of our human rights treaties. And we should not be spending billions and billions of pounds on illegal migrants living in hotels, on HMOs, on a street near you. We just need to return to what I think most people in this country would agree on, which is secure borders, safe streets, stop wasting all this money and actually put the interest of the British people first.
The Equalities Act, that was it.
That is all Reform is calling for.
Equalities Act, that was the other thing he mentioned as well. You want to get rid of the Equalities Act. What's wrong with you, Jenrick? You don't like equal anything?
Well, look, our country was built upon a series of pieces of law which we can all agree on, like the race equality laws, the Disability Discrimination Act, the Equal Pay Act. Of course, people should be being paid the same in the workplace, should never be discriminated against. But what happened under Tony Blair and Gordon Brown was those perfectly sensible, in fact, groundbreaking pieces of legislation that commanded broad support were twisted and contorted out of all, semblance of common sense into something which prizes division over national unity and means that the one group in our country that does not see its rights protected are actually white British people, to the point where, I represent a pretty normal part of the country, a working class community in North Nottinghamshire. I could go into a school there and find a white young boy from a tough background who would go onto the website of GCHQ, the Security Services, the Bank of England, and discover that he was literally banned from applying for work experience there, whilst an old Etonian who was a black, man or woman, could find that they can apply to the BBC or, these schemes
just
based on the colour of their skin. And I don't want to live in a country like that.
No,
I want to live in a country where everybody is treated equally, equal under the law. That's what matters to me, and that does mean scrapping this legislation and returning to the ways that we had beforehand.
Let's talk about energy, Robert. There's a lot to get into here. We'll talk about the Conservatives' policy on it. You remember the Conservatives? Blue Party.
Oh yes,
sit opposite the government at the moment.
I remember
you were
that,
part of it. Yeah, that one. Let's just play a clip firstly. Ed Miliband. This is on that whole issue of energy bills. Let's have a listen to what the Energy Secretary, I think it's Secretary of State for Net Zero, isn't he? I think that's the official title. Here's what he said on TV just a week ago.
Families will be deeply concerned about the impacts they face as a result of the Iran conflict. This government is determined to fight people's corner. As a result of actions in the last budget, the energy bill price cap will fall from next week and is guaranteed till the end of June. We've already provided 50 million of immediate support for vulnerable customers who use heating oil. We'll act to prevent unfair practices like price gouging. Above all, we'll work to end this conflict, which is so essential and urgent for our national interest.
Now, here's the thing, Robert J. There was me thinking that Ed Miliband was a little bit extra, bit of an evangelist. Turns out he's going to help us all. I mean, well, what was I missing all this time? You heard the man's own words there.
Well, what's he actually doing?
Yeah, I don't know what any of that meant.
He's doing absolutely nothing. Him and Rachel Reeves are acting like bystanders in an energy crisis. He could, tomorrow, lift the ban that he has imposed on new licences for drilling in the North Sea. Instead, he is literally buying oil and gas from the Norwegian part of the same sea rather than the British bit, losing the jobs, the tax revenues and the energy security that could come with it. He could take action, as we in Reform have proposed, to do an emergency cut in VAT on domestic energy bills to lighten the load on everyone who's finding those massive bills dropping on their doormats at the moment. He could do an emergency cut on fuel duty, which many other countries around the world are doing. I don't know if you saw overnight, Australia have done it. They're coming hot on the heels of Sweden, of Spain, of Portugal, the Republic of Ireland, of Poland, to lighten the load when you fill up at the pumps. Definitely say to Rachel Reeves, do not increase fuel duty in September, as she's proposing to do, and get rid of these ridiculous green levies and taxes that have been added by stealth by the last Conservative government and now by Labour to everyone's energy bills. Those sorts of measures taken together would be enough to save the average household 200 quid on their energy bill. And if you filled up at the pump, anything between 18 and 20p per litre on petrol and diesel. These are practical things that could be done now and are affordable if you get rid of some of the completely crazy net zero subsidies that he's proposing, like heat pumps and electric vehicles, new experimental technologies that don't work, like carbon capture and storage. But instead, he's doubling down for ideological reasons on the net zero agenda that he has been a proponent of for decades, and which is impoverishing people, deindustrialising our country, and has to be stopped.
Have the Conservatives stolen your clothes on this, or did you nick theirs? Because I mean, you might have known what the plans were when you were back at Tory HQ, Robert. They've joined, of course, Reform in urging ministers to scrap VAT on energy bills and restart North Sea drilling. So, is this something that Kemi Badenoch has just literally, not under the light of a silvery moon, but in the cold light of day, just stolen your policy? Or was she already thinking in this kind of direction?
Well, look, it's always flattering when your opponents copy and paste your policies. Maybe Kemi's been on to www.nigelcutmybills.com and seen our plan. Maybe she's even entered the competition that we've created for someone street to have their energy bills paid for a year.
Saw that.
I have to look out for a Kay Badenoch of Wimbledon.
Wouldn't it be fantastic if she won it?
Well, it'd be funny if Nigel and I knocked on her door and handed her a cheque.
Or what if that'd be the photo of the decade?
But in all seriousness, look, it is bigger than party politics. So yes, it's good that they're getting behind us, actually, if that increases the pressure on Rachel Reeves to take action. The things I just mentioned, cutting VAT on domestic heating, an emergency cut on VAT at the petrol pumps, getting rid of the green levies and taxes. These are practical things that could be done right now to lighten the load, because everybody's finding life very, very tough at the moment. I mean, they do need some help.
That business of North Sea oil, I can never quite get my head around how this works, and perhaps you have to be a kind of engineering this world to fully understand it, or a geographer of some sort. If you started drilling again tomorrow, does the oil just come shooting out? Is it ready to go?
Well, there's
or
at least
would it be like years before you could re-benefit from what is
there are two licenses that are sat on the Energy Secretary's desk one called Rosebank, one called Jackdaw. These are big projects, and experts believe that if they were signed off this afternoon, within a matter of months, you could start to see oil flowing, tax revenues to the tune of hundreds of millions or billions coming into the exchequer, which could be used, incidentally, to make everyone's bills cheaper, subsidise hard-working people, and you'd certainly create thousands of British people's jobs. There are others that will take months or even years to come online, but, you know, there's no time like the present to actually start this. Do you remember back in the day, Nick Clegg was on camera saying, oh, you don't want to invest in new nuclear because it will take 15 years to bring them online.
Would have been done by now.
Well, they would have been done by now. We'd be in a hell of a lot better situation if he hadn't stood in the way of it. So those things could actually help. And the madness of the present situation is that since 2021, the UK has paid Norway £100 billion for gas, which has come from the very same sea that Ed Miliband and, frankly, the last Conservative government are making it all but impossible to drill from. That is money that should not be being spent. We'd all be better off. We'd have more energy security, more jobs. Let's just get on and do this, and it would improve our energy security.
In 10 seconds, Robert, when's the next defection coming? We haven't had one for a couple of weeks. There must be due a defection to Reform UK.
You know, I actually
From Labour, maybe?
Well, I actually think we, as a party, are not so interested in that. What is most important to us now is actually not taking people from the Tory party or the Labour Party, but getting people who are fresh to politics. And that is what you're going to see in the months ahead. You know, journalists, dare I say it?
Who knows?
But certainly teachers, doctors, farmers, business people, veterans.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yeah, welcome back. Home of Common Sense. We are talking, amongst other things, so much stuff going on at this end. Tens of thousands marching on central London on Saturday against what they called the far right. The demonstration featured those well-known prominent campaigners Lenny Henry and Paloma Faith to convince you that actually the right wing are very bad people indeed and the real decent folk are all on the left. It drew over, according to them, 100,000 people. That figure is questioned. We're asking them, who exactly is this far right that they refer to? Who are they talking about and why do you need to fear them? It's a funny old question, but we've had some great answers to it. Also this afternoon, MPs and benefit claimants set to receive significant payments this week to combat the cost of living crisis, despite Rachel Reeves dismissing widespread aid for families who are facing an energy crisis due to the war in Iran. So MPs get a stonking 5% pay rise, including 3,300 quid for their cost of living adjustment. I mean, seriously, are we living in an upside-down world? What a kick in the teeth from our parliamentarians. And a Sun investigation can reveal that police across Britain have failed to solve a colossal 92% of all burglaries last year. In 1/3 of the country, no cases at all. I mean, you really can't make this stuff up. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. Great comments coming in from you. This one from Simon in Nottingham says, there is one question you need to ask a lefty who doesn't like millionaires. Do you buy a lottery ticket? Great question. It's that simple, isn't it? No, I refuse to become a millionaire. And when they say millionaires, who are they literally referring to? Are they referring to, Andy Murray or Chris Martin? Usually not. It's very bizarre how people select who they have this kind of stereotypical idea of some kind of horrendous taker of money, working class people's money, who go and lay in a hammock in Barbados for the rest of time. Andy Murray isn't rich at the expense of poor people. My sister isn't struggling because Alex Ferguson's got a few quid. Or Chris Martin does well. I mean, it's a nonsense, but it's always that they're taking money from the working classes and giving it to the millionaires. It's such a nonsensical statement, but it gets wheeled out all over the place. Something that's a very real statement is the state of crime in this country. We know police have failed to solve 92% of burglaries in Britain last year. Let that settle in for a second. We hear this kind of figure similar to this quite a lot, don't we? So when we hear it, you sort of gloss over a little. Oh, yeah, we heard that before. Something similar to that. It's 92% now, is it? It used to be 91. It's 92% of burglaries weren't solved. And as I mentioned there in the intro, in one-third of cases, in 1/3 of the country, no cases were solved at all. Let's speak with Norman Brennan. As a crime contributor on these things, a speaker on these issues, because he's a former police officer of over 3 decades and director of the Law and Order Foundation. Always good to get your view on this, Norman. I can't work out what's happened here, because have the police just given up on burglaries? Has it become a sort of a non-crime now? What's happening?
I'll be blunt, Ian. The criminal justice system is not just broken, it's shattered. Policing is broken. Probation is broken. The prison service is broken. Probation, as I said to you, cannot even cope with all the new people being released. This government came into power and they released tens of thousands of criminals that basically were given every chance before they were sent to prison to mend their ways. They didn't, so they released them at the 30 or 40% stage. Many other serious offenders that were put in prison because they stabbed or committed very serious crimes such as rape are also being released early. So the whole criminal justice system is absolutely shattered. And when you think about it, as Nigel Evans said, that the government basically have decriminalised shoplifting, which is the epidemic stage. He's absolutely right. Knife crime is at an epidemic stage. I've been campaigning on that, Ian, as you will know, for 3 decades, including when I was in the police service. And what happened? This government come along and basically said that those under the age of 18, if they're caught carrying a knife, will, instead of being arrested and put before the courts, which they rightly should be, will be given education programs Yet most of those that are committing these types of crime have actually been excluded from the education system, so are out on the streets. So we know that's a non-entity. Ian, I could go on. I've just given you just a nutshell of how the criminal justice system is broken. We don't see the police on the streets. Victims of crime pick up the phone. They don't get police attendance. They don't get their crimes investigated. And coming right back to what we're talking about now, 92% of burglaries do not get a result or a conviction. And 1% of all phone thefts end in a conviction. 1%.
1%. Do you think it's also the headlines we've had for kind of, you know, I feel like forever now, Norman, whenever we speak, it's on these kind of stories. That do you sense that it's got a self kind of fulfilling effect, that the more it's talked about, that the police are not turning up for mobile phone theft or shoplifting or even burglary, that begets more burglaries, more phone theft, more shoplifting?
We become impotent to shop, Ian. We hear about it, as you rightly say, day in and day out. You and me have known each other probably for about 3 decades. I worked it out the other day that since I was in the police, when I first broke from the ranks, the first police officer ever to do so, and I remain within the police service, risking my career, trying to warn the public of what we're talking about now, 30 years on. Nobody ever listened. Nobody ever acted. And if you want my overview, and I think we're almost too late, we need a royal commission into policing and the criminal justice system. But the reality is we can't control our borders and keep them safe. We can't control the streets and keep them safe. We see a police officer. And the population growth, Ian, from 2009 till now, we require 20,000 more additional police officers. However, last year, 9,000 threw in the towel and resigned. I don't know how I can dress it up enough, Ian.
No, I know.
People realise how serious this is. And we've got another 10 or 15 years of dreadful news. And I'm still going to give up doing interviews because I might as well be piddling in the wind and banging my head against the wall. Because if no one listens, one of Britain's leading law and order campaigners, and don't forget, I risked my career as a serving officer, seeing what was coming, to highlight what was coming, and nobody did a damn thing. I'm wasting my time talking to you, as nice a guy as you are, Ian.
Do you think, I mean, if you talk to the average copper, I was at the Cleveland Bravery Awards on Thursday night, so I'm in a room with 200-300 cops, and of course, you know what those awards are like, Norman. Half a dozen awards are handed out, 7 awards, 16 police officers who've done the most incredible things, life on the line stuff, game-changing stuff, life-changing injuries in the line of duty, just unbelievable. And I think what I heard on Thursday night were probably some of the most powerful stories I've ever heard in policing. These are dedicated men and women. These are people that joined the force because they wanted to make a difference. They're not sitting there in their cars, are they, going, oh, there's a burglary at number 10, let's not bother. This is coming from elsewhere, surely. The average copper wants to solve crime.
Like you, Ian, I speak to police officers daily, many that are absolutely broken. These are serving officers. And it's difficult to put the phones down to them. A number of these have actually tried to do what you, the public and victims, want. For example, stop and search people that are carrying knives and the rest of it. And God forbid they stop and search someone that is a young black lad. Mum will make a complaint, and that officer may undergo 2 to 3 years of investigation. It breaks them. And even if they are cleared, which often many are, they're never the same people again, and they will resign and throw in the towel. We don't need to lose them people. And the caveat to all of this, Ian, is this. We have lost traditional policing, where the public see police officers, where the victims feel reassured because a police officer has turned up, taken the time, which is not a gift, it's what they should expect, and their crimes to be investigated. And when I was in the job, just to finish off with, Ian, we attended to every single shoplifting, every single burglary, every single robbery, every antisocial behaviour. We turned up in numbers. We controlled the streets rightfully and lawfully. On the streets of Britain now, we never see a cop, and we're discussing the most dreadful of figures. And sadly, Ian, these won't wake up society enough to demand the government acts.
And that is where we have to leave it. Norman, listen, I always hear it in your voice when we speak on these kind of things. And again, just to echo what you said, I don't know how many times we can have this conversation. Norman Brennan, thank you, sir, as ever. Former cop of over 3 decades in the job. He's director of the Law and Order Foundation as well. Thank you to him. Does it need a party that's going to sound like it means it when it comes to crime? As far as, look, this isn't any great statement of originality, because we know there are problems, it's not just a case of a politician standing up. I always talk about the lack of fire in the belly of our major parties. You don't really hear a Home Secretary stand up and get really bloody annoyed and talk, or a Prime Minister, I'm not having this anymore. This was not going to happen. Just doesn't happen, right? I'm also aware that even if they did do that, and you heard Shabana Mahmood stood up tomorrow and said, right, if you're caught burglaring a house, you're going to go to jail for 20 years, OK? That's going to be the minute. We're going to investigate every single one as a matter of urgency. You know what the answer to that's going to be is, right, where is the court time? Where are the police to deal with this, firstly? Where is the court time to be able to administer a justice and a court case? And if found guilty, where are the prison places? And then the argument stops. That's it. And that really, the last 2 points there, courts and jails, largely informs the first point as to why you don't hear animated politicians. Because they can say it until they're blue in the face. I don't know how many of them want to get that animated, but even if they did, they'd be cut off by the short and curlies due to the lack of availability of court time. The whole system is chock-a-block. The backlog is immense. And even if you got through that, you've then got to find prison places to put the tens of thousands of old scropes that have robbed houses into jail. And it's that, right? So we're stuck in this perpetual circle of doom, and nobody can apparently solve it. Let's go back to your calls on energy and net zero. This is Louise down in Kent. How you doing, Louise?
Oh, all right. I tell you what, Ian, I have heard some dire stuff today from the government. Well, the first thing is, I read that apparently Ed Miliband, in order to get his net zero targets for the UK for 2030, he has declared that all the electricity coming through the cables, which I believe is still about 12% from Europe, even if it's produced, well, it will be produced in a gas-powered or coal-fired power station, which it will be, as it comes through the cables, it becomes zero carbon rated, like our wind and solar.
Got it. So you're saying they're cooking the books?
Yes, very much so.
So they hit a target, but that target is what's beneath the target. The journey of that electricity actually tells a story of fossil fuel use.
Yes, because it's coming from fossil fuel power stations on the continent.
Wow.
But once it gets here, apparently it becomes net zero.
Yeah, they do this with a lot of companies that claim to be, what do they call it, greenwashing, don't they, where companies claim that they've got a green credential, but actually when you drill down, no pun, into it, you realise it's anything but.
Well, it's no different from all solar panels coming from China, is it? It's the same thing there,
Yep.
you know. The other one I heard, which is absolutely mind-blowing, apparently Rachel Reeves has gone to the G7 and stuff, and she is trying to persuade other countries to double down on renewables, like we are, in order to deal with this crisis.
Yeah.
But apparently, and I read it in the Mail, I think, because one of your chaps asked me who it was. She has gone to them, begging them not to hoard oil and gas.
Really? Yeah, well, I don't know if you take your oil and gas wisdom, really, from Rachel Reeves or anyone in this government, frankly. Listen, Louise, I've got to cut it short because we've got more to get through. As ever, you've been great. Thank you. Richard Holden's going to join us in a few moments, Shadow Transport Secretary. We've got a lot to say on that issue of cousin marriage. A lot to talk about. Stand by for that coming next on Talk.
breaking news on Talk Breakfast. Two men, aged 47 and 45, have in the last hour been arrested in connection with the Golders Green arson attack. To me, symbolising absolutely a rise in anti-Semitism. Again, nothing from the government.
Breaking news. It's just a small matter. They have just an announcement saying transgender girls, i.e. boys, they must leave girl guiding by this September the 6th.
We are buying from Norway because they fully exploit their share of the North Sea oil and gas fields, and we don't. Alice in Wonderland nuts.
The Crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royalty from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in crisis. Subscribe to the royalty from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello and welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCounts.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Suits, that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beers, and I feel
raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of this desperation.
Is public
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk 20 past 3. Another headline that grabbed our attention today was that the Conservatives are looking to ban cousin marriage to improve UK social cohesion. You do sort of scratch your head and say, I mean, every time we've talked about this, there's lots of people get in touch and say, I didn't even realise you could marry your cousin. Yeah, apparently you still can. More common in some groups than others. Richard Holden, MP, Shadow Transport Secretary, joins us. Richard, good afternoon to you. Again, just to echo that last point, it does come as a shock to many people. This is even something that can happen, but not only is it allowed to happen, but it's not that uncommon in certain areas.
It does come as a shock to people, Ian. I did a poll, actually, when I was... I started to look at this, because this is something I've been campaigning for some time now, to ban first cousin marriage in the UK, and around half of people just didn't know that it was actually legal in order to do it, and basically, aside from a very small percentage, everyone else thinks that it should be banned as well as those people who thought it was already banned, and the truth is that there are real issues from first cousin marriage. The first is obviously the health impacts, because we know of those genetic diseases. If people share the same sort of grandparents, especially if it's generation after generation after generation, as it is in some of these communities, you're going to have all sorts of genetic issues there, some of which you can't even scan for and aren't present until after birth. And then there's huge consequences of that, for the welfare system, for the health system as well. But there's other issues as well, which I think are also, of really real importance too. I mean, one is that, if two people share, if I marry my first cousin, we share the same set of grandparents, right? That means that there's actually the control and the freedom within that relationship doesn't actually exist, because, if somebody tries to leave, they're not just leaving their other half, they're actually leaving their entire family network potentially, and all of the control structures around that.
Yeah.
And then finally, there's that broader issue around societal impact. People, people should be free to marry whoever. That's what sort of binds us together, actually, as a nation. Really, the idea that we're not all related to each other. Actually, we've got to have rules and regulations which we can all abide by outside of the family structure. Family structures are obviously important, but that does not extend to forcing people to basically into marriages within their extended family, which has all of those negative consequences.
How was this prior to perhaps people coming from different cultures where there would be a huge proportion of people in comparison to the remainder of the population, so Muslim families would be a greater number, if not the exclusive number. I don't know, maybe you can correct me, but was there ever a point when it was illegal and then ceased to become illegal, or was it something that was never ever addressed on the statute books?
Well, bizarrely, actually, Britain did make this illegal via the church back in, I think, around the 8th, 9th, and 10th centuries.
Oh.
Interestingly, Henry VIII made it legal when he wanted to marry a relative of his a cousin of his wife, who I think he had beheaded. So that changed in the 16th century. However, basically, it really. After in the Victorian era, this really died out because people started to realise the genetic consequences of it here in the UK. So it's been a very small issue, such a minute issue for such a long period of time. People remember things like the Habsburg monarchy of Spain, where they became so inbred that they eventually died out. And I really think now that we've got to. This is something that's come to light because it's not the Muslim community per se in Great Britain. It's actually elements of the British Pakistani community, so most of whom are Muslim, admittedly, but from some certain rural parts of Pakistan. It's actually a cultural tradition rather than it is a religious one. And also there are also issues in some other communities, like the Irish traveller community. It's much, much higher than the general population as well. But I just think it's something that we need to take head on, not pussyfoot around. Let's just be honest about it. This is something which shouldn't have a place in modern society. It hasn't had a real place in British society for, a couple of hundred years. I think Prince Albert and Queen Victoria were first cousins, but that's almost 200 years ago.
Sure.
I think we've moved on since then. So I think now we should just draw a line under it. And it's great to see Kemi Badenoch speaking up yesterday in broad support of something I've been campaigning for a long time.
There are some politicians, some parliamentarians, your colleagues on the Labour benches. I remember a little while back when this debate was happening, and as you rightly said, Richard, you've sort of headed this up in many respects for a long time, but there were some very, very passionate voices against anything that you've just said there.
There certainly were. Iqbal Mohammed, who is an independent MP, one of the so-called Gaza independents from up in Batley, he made a speech against the proposal, and obviously the Prime Minister himself, when I asked him about it at Prime Minister's Questions, basically slapped me down and said we're not going to do anything about this at all, which. I think the truth is that the overwhelming majority, and you can see this in all the opinion polls, the overwhelming majority of people in this country, if they didn't think it was banned already, they think it should be banned. Yeah. And actually the truth is, within all of the ethnic minority communities, an overwhelming majority want it banned as well. Because actually, imagine if you're in one of these communities and you're sort of being forced down this line against your will, what you want actually sometimes is the protection of the state to say no, this is wrong, and so I think this would be something which would be the good of everyone. Some of those patriarchal clan structures which dominate certain communities and lead to all sorts of other issues. We saw in Gordon and Denton some of those issues around clan-based voting and stuff like that. We've got to break apart these clans and allow individual freedom, which was established here in Britain many centuries ago, to really come through.
Indeed. This is not a hijack moment, Richard, but I'm bound to just ask you, because you are the Shadow Transport Secretary. The other thing people want banned is the amount of tax that is on fuel at the moment. We had Robert Jenrick sitting here. You remember Robert Jenrick. Think back. Come on, you can do it. Robert Jenrick, the fellow that used to sit on your benches. Him. He was saying, look, Reform have got it all planned and the Tories have nixed Reform's ideas.
Yes, well, quite. I think the truth is that, we voted against this in the budget last year. We've been fighting hard against it. We actually put this, remember, that the 5p fuel duty cut was done under the last Conservative government. That's what Labour are now trying to reverse. In September, with a back-to-school tax. In December, they're going to try and do it in slices, you see. Yep. And then December with a sort of Christmas shopping tax, and then a spring tax next year. We've been very clear. We would not be reversing this, especially at this time when we're now seeing global oil prices shoot up. I went down to fill up the car the other day. I'm paying 25p a litre more than I was just a couple of months ago. People are already really worried, and we should not be imposing higher taxes. This shouldn't be happening anyway. But the fact that the government's still doing it when we're facing this global crisis is a disgrace. And, it's great to see Robert, realising what we did in government.
There it is. Richard, beautifully said. Thank you, Richard Holden, MP. He's the Shadow Transport Secretary. Thank you to him. The Tories have got your back, he says. Can they make that climb back, that return to the public consciousness as the party that you might vote for? They've still got a mountain to climb. Helen is in Leicestershire. What have you got for us, Helen? Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian.
Hiya.
Great show as always.
Thank you.
Just sort of making a reference to fuel prices, domestic fuel prices.
Yeah.
And this comes up a lot, but I think we don't talk about it enough. Is the fact that, for example, on my energy bills, I have to pay £90, more than £90 a quarter standing charges.
Yes.
What I've noticed since January, when the prices all changed, the cost of a unit, like a kilowatt hour, has gone down.
Yeah.
But the standing charge on the electricity has gone up significantly.
Yes.
And it's a secret increase.
Can we also change the word standing charge, which sounds like it means something? And
yes.
It doesn't mean anything. It's a bit like going into a shop and they say a loaf of bread is £1, but you also have to pay another £1 for buying it. It's
Yes,
like that.
yeah.
It doesn't mean anything. And I was looking at my water bill the other day. I had a terrible issue with a leak about a year ago, and the water bill was going through the roof. The water company we didn't clock it at first, and the water company didn't clock it, and then suddenly all hell broke loose, and we end up paying for the repair. Anyway, so you try to make head and tail of these bills, and even though they've simplified them, they're still a little bit iffy. And I again was drawn to the standing charge thing, and I thought,
right, yeah, sure.
What is that? It doesn't mean anything. I don't own the little thing that's on the street where the meter is. That's not my property. I pay for the water. If the pipes break and they're in my property, which you've only got to be out of the curb, out of the path, and they're in your property, I've also got to pay for that. So why am I paying a standing charge? That's just charging me for having the audacity to pay.
Exactly, and the standing charge is nearly always on this. I will say there is an exception this time, if I've got this correct, is that the gas standing charge since January has gone down a few pence a day.
Happy days.
But, happy days. But to compensate for that, the electricity price standing charge has gone up significantly. So when Rachel Reeves talks about the unit price and we're going to save you £150 and blah, 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 nobody ever makes reference to the standing charge to tell us, as you so rightly say, Ian, what it's for and why it nearly always goes up.
I mean, the standing charge suggests that if there was no electricity or gas, you'd still pay a charge.
So you can be as frugal and as careful as you like.
You can't swerve the mystery of the standing charge.
I know. It's barking mad. But anyway, I just thought I'd raise
Love it. Helen, that's brilliant. Love your bit of investigation there into that one. Helen in Leicestershire, the mysterious standing charge. Man alive. The water bill is killing me at the moment. Every time I look at it, 1 minute it looks like I think I've got it down to the fact that I'm now using, they give you a little graph. I think most electricity companies do this. They give you a little graph at the bottom of your bill if you bother to get down that far. It's usually online. If you scroll down and it tells you what you use in comparison to your neighbours and then the average or something like that. And I'm now below average, but their new suggested monthly payments don't suggest that is below average. It's that, and I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, I don't know what all these figures mean. They've got they're algebraic in some of it. It's doing my nutting at the moment. We'll come back to that, I'm sure. Loads more comment from you on the way. 0344 499 1000.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Oh, there's a lot to look at here. The BBC are back under the spotlight for a couple of reasons here. They've been accused of being anti-British. It's slashed its team behind major state occasions such as the Queen's funeral and Remembrance Sunday. Yeah, I mean, I don't know to just what, but to just something, Finn. I'm sure there's a rest of that sentence to be written on that little script there, but we will see. But the point is this. The one thing, even critics of the BBC, which is a lot of us, would often say, well, they do that pomp and ceremony stuff really well. They do it, they do the funerals and the weddings and certainly, commemorance, Remembrance Sunday and that kind of stuff. Philip Kisley is with us, Senior Fellow at the New Culture Forum. It was almost their stamp, if you like, I suppose, Philip, that they could do that big stuff rather well. And it all looked good. I'm not suggesting somebody else couldn't do it equally as well. I mean, see what happened with the world of sport when it went to Sky. And everyone, they can't do that. And now they're, world leaders in that respect. So it can be done elsewhere. But it's just, I suppose, another marker, isn't it, to show that the BBC is becoming even more irrelevant.
It is, absolutely. I couldn't have put it better myself, Ian. Brilliant. Great to see you. They've slashed that team to one person.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that's how seriously they take state events. That's how seriously they take our heritage, our kind of national history, as it's presented through the royal family and events and Remembrance Sunday and all of that kind of thing. By contrast, Ian, the people they sent to Glastonbury, they sent 500 people to Glastonbury to cover Glastonbury.
Yes.
This year. So there's something happening, isn't there, as far as the BBC is concerned, as far as the public service broadcaster, the national broadcaster, which is supposed to be impartial, which is supposed to entertain and educate. It's doing none of those things, okay? Something is happening. And it's almost as though festivals, pop festivals like Glastonbury have taken the place. That's the thing where all people come together, taken the place of things like Remembrance Sunday for the BBC. I'm talking about here. So something is happening. The people who they're employing value those events much more, and the corporation itself value pop festivals more than something like Remembrance Sunday, remembering the dead, and celebrating our heritage and history.
I'm guessing if there was somebody from the BBC sat here, for the one or two that still work there, if we could get one into the studio here, they would say, well, actually, that pomp and ceremony stuff, very few people watch it. Glastonbury, we flog it around the world. It's lucrative and it's massive. So we've done the numbers, and that's the reason why we are, getting rid of everybody apart from one person who's going to work in the Remembrance Sunday unit. He's got his work cut out, hasn't he, by the way?
Yeah, he's going to be recording, he's going to be writing, he's going to be sweeping the floor, he's going to be doing all sorts
Selling
of stuff.
the poppies, he's doing everything.
Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, they would make that case. And of course it isn't true, because they're, as I said before, they're a public service broadcaster. They aren't a commercial entity. We know that because we have to pay our television license. So what they should be doing is educating, and they should be presenting British culture in a way that is impartial. And of course they're not doing that. They are privileging one aspect of British culture. They are privileging, identity politics. Don't forget Glastonbury last year, we had some half-naked idiot jumping around the stage shouting death, death to the IDF, So and they thought that was perfectly okay to put that out. So there is something going on here. They are privileging a particular type of culture, a popular culture, an identitarian culture, over and above what is universally understood to be Britishness and British heritage, I would say.
Just a final BBC one. I mean, it's not often we would talk about the Radio 2 lineup, but it's a big station. I think it's the biggest in the country. Its breakfast show is absolutely huge, and they've just fired its presenter, Scott Mills. Now, this apparently is something it's being reported that it's connected to a past relationship, a historic male relationship. So you don't tend to lose your job just because you had a relationship. There's clearly more to that story. But again, it comes as a... Look, I know when the BBC... When somebody who happened to appear on the BBC once, the press always talk about, oh, they're a BBC presenter. It's like, well, they were once on Antiques Roadshow for 10 seconds. I have a sympathy for that. But, you know, clearly you don't lose one of your top presenters if there's not a good reason for it.
No, I mean, they've dropped him like a hot potato.
Yeah.
You know, just wham, that's it. So it must be something quite serious. But for me, I don't know what viewers think, and I'd really be interested to know what viewers think, but I'd never heard of this guy until today, right? Yeah. Seriously, I'm not joking. So the BBC isn't what it was. Yes, it's a fairly big show, but it's niche in comparison to what it used to be, okay? This is the show that Terry Wogan, you know, Ken Bruce, and other BBC Radio 2 presenters, Jimmy Young, absolute household names. Everybody in the country knew who they are. I think one of the biggest problems the BBC has got at the moment, it's turning into a narrowcaster rather than a broadcaster. In other words, it's just servicing a very particular demographic, the demographic that watches Glastonbury, and it's ignoring everybody else, or to put it more correctly, everybody else is ignoring the BBC, and I think that's a major problem. In terms of what he's done, God knows, but it must be fairly serious, as I say, because they've just dropped him straight away, and they wouldn't do that if it wasn't, you know, fair.
Well, indeed. On that point, Philip, thank you. Nice to have you on. Philip Kisley, he's Senior Fellow at the New Culture Forum. They have suggested, or certainly the reports are suggesting, the accusation relates to a relationship from more than 10 years ago. Now, nobody knows the details. It's always a bit of a dodgy journey to go on to guess what the details are. But you don't just get fired because you had a relationship 10 years ago. There will be more to, as I said earlier, when people in, you know, he was in a senior position in terms of BBC presenters. He was up there. Not only was he presenting the Radio 2 breakfast show, I think he was due to present the Eurovision Song Contest. I think he was also on, what was it? Was it the race against the, what do they call it? Race against the world, race across the world, rather, spin-off, because I think he'd won that or was part of it the year before. He was always going to make a cameo appearance on EastEnders. The brutality of this, and again, depending on information when it does come out, people will say, well, rightly so. But as it stands, the usual rule of thumb is that he hasn't just lost his job, he's probably lost his career. That will be it. Programmes will edit out the person, they will remove them from being referenced, and they just become person non grata. So I don't know the details of this, but bearing in mind this is connected, according to reports, to a previous relationship from 10 years ago, there is clearly much more to it. And if there's much more to it, that would suggest that you can kiss goodbye to Race Across the World spin-offs and any presentation of the Eurovision Song Contest in any shape or form. So it's going to be a grim day to him, for him. But we will await the finer details, I guess, for those who care. Jason in Wiltshire, back to fuel duty. Jason, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. Thank you for taking the call.
It's a pleasure. What are your thoughts?
Well, this sort of unpopular government at the moment, you would have thought someone with a little bit of common sense, cost of living, he bangs on about it, he's going to tackle it, he's going to do it. Watching these other countries, what they're doing with fuel duty, a little sort of feather in the cap for them. Like, well, let's go down that road and we'll help our citizens of the United Kingdom and stuff. But instead, they haven't. I don't think they've got any intentions of doing that with, like, following what Spain, Portugal, Ireland, etc. are doing. We're in so much debt, and the amount of spending, what they're just hemorrhaging on immigrants, all these public sector pay rises they keep doing, net zero. It's just hemorrhaging money. It's just getting that extra little bit of money out of the hard-working people to fund this black hole that's just gone absolutely out of control.
Is there? I keep wondering when it comes to all of this, Jason. Is there a kind of an uncomfortable but a very honest answer to getting through this? Because if you talk to most people, the black hole, getting the debt addressed, you never fully, you need some debt in the system because that's how the system kind of works. But the overarching headline at the moment is we're absolutely knackered. We're up the what's it without a paddle. We are stuffed. It's no sign of getting better. And even if you put a good plan a reasonable plan into place, it could be decades before we sort of turn that corner and everybody starts to feel that life's pretty good. Now, is there an alternative where somebody could come along and go, right, we're going to do something really radical here. We're going to solve the debt. We're going to solve everything. But to do that, we've got to do this. I don't know what this is, by the way. I'm not the Chancellor or the Prime Minister. But do you think anyone else... Do you think anyone has the answer, Jason?
Well, to be fair, I think the amount of debt that the Labour... I mean, they're saying, as I read the other day, it's the highest amount of borrowing we've had in the last 24, 25 years.
Yeah.
They've done again what they've done back in 2008. They just sort of come in when they left, there's no money. They've literally, it's going to be the same again.
Yeah.
But it's just going to the fact that they're so unpopular that just that little sort of, we can relieve tax duties. We can make it a little bit easier for the working man / woman going to work.
Yes.
They're not going to do it. And all Ed Millipede keeps going on about is net zero and old Hoffenmoster or whatever his name is who works for him with his GB Energy. I can't remember what his name is, but you know I'm on about.
I know exactly who you mean.
Yeah.
I don't know. It would be nice, wouldn't it, if somebody could at least begin the journey of turning that corner. But I sense, Jason, that we're probably in it for the long haul. Thank you, Jason in Wiltshire. Starts off on fuel duty, but we move into other areas with him as well. Is there this magical answer? The other take on this is that we've got to get used to just living in a very expensive world. That's it. So we can moan about it. We can have politicians that will sort of do a little bit of painting over the cracks, once in a while making the odd thing a little bit more manageable for a small group of people. But overarchingly, we've just got to get used to the fact we're not the country we used to be. We're very expensive. That's the way it's going to be. Get used to it. Live accordingly. That's quite defeatist, but is that kind of where we're at? 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Transport good.
The world is on fire. Russia, Iran, China, conflicts brewing in all of their different regions. They're not waiting. But here in Britain, our armed forces are underfunded, they're undermanned, and they're underprepared. And nobody in government wants to talk about it. Well, we do. I'm Philip Ingram, and I spent my career in the world of intelligence, military planning, strategic planning, and unfortunately, conflict. This is Talk War, and this is where we analyse the conflicts shaping our world.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. David says, Voice of Doom, was it Robert Jenrick? The recording was quite long, to be fair. That's brilliant. It was a longest clip. We are going to play it tomorrow at the same time. Yeah, no Voice of Doom today. We've got one ready to go. It's a brand new one. It starts tomorrow, though. Sarah says, rather than having rubbish that is PMQs every week, we should have a different minister hauled up in front of a committee and challenged on their policies. Like how Starmer was recently, where he was embarrassing himself again. Mental Miliband should be first. They're never challenged properly. That's a fair point as well, isn't it? 0344 499 1000. Just before we go to your calls, let me remind you, big chance here. We're always giving stuff away here on Talk. This is massive. It's a life-changing £20,000. Yes, you heard that correctly. £20,000 could be yours completely tax-free here on Talk. 20 grand straight in your bank account. Spend it, save it, splash it. It's entirely up to you. Have a listen to this to see how you could be in with a chance to win.
For your chance to win, text TALK to 83338. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 9th of April 2026, 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus, UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talk.tv/win. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now.
It is Talk. 8 minutes to 4 o'clock. Kevin O'Sullivan's here at 4. We'll chat to Kevin in just a bit. Andrew is in Hertfordshire. What have you got, Andrew? Hi.
Yeah, this is what it's all about, Kevin. This is politics now, and it's being a leader and being Prime Minister. So what you've got to do is you've got to go, right, the two child benefit change, can it? Put it back. Benefit increases, there's none. Public sector wages, there's none. What you've got to do is you've got to lead now and say, technically, we are in this together. And you've got to go to that fuel duty and you've got to just take it you've got to take 20 points off it. Or the country's dead on its feet. Your lovely lad that does the phones, how's he going to get to work? The girl that works alongside you, how's she? How's someone going to run their children to school? This is not a game. Keep the country safe and going. That's all he has to do.
Yeah. It's a very good point. Damien, who answers the phone, I should say, contributes almost very little to the economy right now. He just, only on beer tax is, frankly, the way the Exchequer gains from Damien.
You should be nicer to Damien, because I chat to him sometimes in the mornings. He and Tommy hold that station together.
Yeah, I don't even know how to begin to challenge. Damien is a top bloke. He might be a Forest supporter, but he's a top bloke. I can tell you that much. Great call, Andrew. Thank you very much for that. Sarah says, I am one of these far-right people. I support reform. I'm 56 and just became a first-time grandmother this morning to a little boy. How fantastic. I just love this country and I'm truly blessed to live here despite the idiots in charge that have ruined it. One in from Johnny up north who says, I often quote that far-right commentator, the fabulously eloquent Douglas Murray, who said the demand on the left for the far right far exceeds supply. That's brilliant. It far exceeds supply. Good point. Paul in Southend makes this point. Your guest has just said, things are not too bad. I'm 84 and I'm guaranteed to be poorer over the next 12 months. I invite him to visit the very real world. I'm trying to remember what guest that would have been when Paul sent that in, but thank you, Paul, for that. This is Davey in Edinburgh. How you doing, Davey?
I'm fine. Yourself?
Very good, sir. What are your thoughts?
Well, you were on earlier talking about the amount of thefts that aren't being traced by the police. No, doing
yes, nothing's happening.
Yeah, I think your contributor Oscar, I think it was, you mentioned that most homes today have doorbells or cameras of some sort. Well, there's not a camera or a doorbell can actually see through a face mask.
That's very good. That's a very good point.
You see them wandering about with face mask hoodies.
Yeah.
You need to outlaw them.
Need to outlaw hoodies and face masks. Well, there was a debate about that, wasn't there, as to how far you go with that. But, you know, I've got a nice little hoodie. There's another debate about whether men my age should even wear hoodies. But, you know, sometimes they're a bit comfortable. Should I be banned from my hoodie because of those dodge pots, Davey?
No. Well, you see, it's almost like a uniform now. They're always dressed in black.
Black hoodie, black trousers, shoes, the whole thing. It's become a thing, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a uniform or a badge or whatever.
And even if you're not intent on crime, you still wear that uniform as a, you know, in some sort of areas where you see kids mooching around on their bikes. They kind of, I think they quite like to look mean even if they're not.
And in the height of summer, they're going to be wearing a face mask or a face cover and a scarf up.
It's a bit suspicious, that, isn't it? Love it. Davey, thank you very much indeed for that. This one comes in from Kay. Police are far more aggressive towards other groups. They're far more lenient to these hate marches. There's certainly been that accusation to the police. I think they go where, again, I said it earlier, the path of least resistance. So if there is a group and it's kicking off, they kind of, I think they sense, rightly or wrongly, that removing the right-winger who's in the group of left-wingers, even though the right-winger's done nothing wrong and the left-wingers are attacking him, removing the right-winger is the right thing to do because it completely immobilises the problem. I think that's the thinking. Ben is in Essex. We've not got long, Ben, but I'm sure you can do it. Who are the far right? Good afternoon to you. Good afternoon, Ian. No idea who these far right are. I think they mysteriously exist in people's heads. I mean, these far left people. Who are the far left? I want to know who the common sense people are because that's the people that I like and want to be. Yes. When are we going to come together as one, as the greater good for the country and as people, instead of this, divisiveness that's going on? And it's funny, these people these left-wing people, they always seem to be of the same sort. Coloured hair, nose rings, maybe slightly overweight, which says to me, no, they don't like taking responsibility for themselves and want to blame someone and have this big government. Yeah. But, when you start talking common sense, wanting to work, low tax, low crime. Controlling your borders. Controlling your borders, all stuff that matters for the greater good, you get labelled this far right. It's a kind of, it's a sort of deranged mentality, isn't it? I mean, it means nothing at all, but it's kind of hijacked and they run with it and they talk about, the poor being robbed to give money to millionaires and all this old guff that's wheeled out, and that's what gets them out of bed in the morning, I think. Ben, I've got to move. You've been great. Thank you. Ben, down there in Essex. And this one's interesting. Didn't know this. Hilton says, how the far wrong oppose the totally right. Incidentally, the Latin word for left is sinister. Did you know that, Kevin O'Sullivan? The Latin word for what? Left is sinister. There you go, absolutely. So it says, I applaud the ancient Romans for their choice in terminology. Yeah, we're going to look at that because, this was the great demonstration of love by allegedly 500,000 Guardian readers.